Chapter 278. Then, can you help me confirm my qualifications now? Han Sho clearly understood that the magical yuan had played an enormous role in being able to reach his current realm, and that his luck was also relatively good. No problem. Just wait a moment, and I'll help you settle everything. Ares answered straightforwardly, and nodded at the Archmage beside him. The Archmage, wearing a loose magic robe, took Han Sho's information to the 3rd floor. Mr. Ares, has that lord outside come again? The girl who had been waiting downstairs clattered up to the 2nd floor and asked Ares. Ares was startled and waved his hand, saying, "Let him come up." Not long after, the sinister-looking Candide walked in with a cold expression. He was a bit dazed when he saw Han Sho standing there. Han Sho was also dazed. He hadn't expected to run into Candide here. A light flashed in his eyes, but he immediately returned to normal, still standing there with a smile on his face. "You old thing, you've been coming to my place quite frequently recently." Ares seemed to have known Candide for a long time. He laughed heartily and said to Candide, "If there wasn't anything else, I wouldn't be bothered to come to your place." "What, is there something else?" Candide shot a glance at Ares and then looked at Han Sho. He said with a frown, acting as if he didn't know Han Sho at all. Hee, there's nothing else. Lancelot Empire's Babylon Academy of Magic and Force has produced yet another amazing magical genius. He advanced from a magic apprentice to an archmage in less than 2 years. This is an incredible matter. His records will become an important basis for the Magic Association. Ares excitedly looked at Han Sho and introduced him to Candide. Candide was obviously shocked as well. He really hadn't expected that Han Sho already possessed the strength of an archmage necromancer. He stared at Han Sho with a burning gaze and said, "Ares, if you don't mind, I'd like to have a few words with this genius youth alone." "I don't mind, but I don't know if he'll mind." Ares shot a glance at Han Sho, indicating that he couldn't influence Han Sho's decision. Ares obviously didn't know about the relationship between Han Sho and Candide. Now that he heard Candide's words, Han Sho understood and nodded at Ares, saying, "I'll have to wait for a while anyways. Since I'm idle, I don't mind chatting with him." "Alright, I'll go up first. You guys go to the 1st floor and don't let anyone else in." Ares instructed the others on the 2nd floor, then smiled at Candide. "When you're done talking with him, his Magus certificate should be ready. When the time comes, just come up and let me know. Don't be so long-winded, I know what to do." Candide seemed to be very familiar with Ares as he impatiently urged Ares. After Ares and the others had left, Candide sized up Han Sho with a strange expression and said, "I just received news from the Valley of Sunshine that you killed Ferguson of the Church of Light. I was just about to look for you to understand the situation. I didn't expect that you would actually come here and even have the qualifications to become an archmage necromancer. You really can surprise me." During his last trip to the Valley of Sunshine, Han Sho, who was in the bloodlust realm, had been unable to suppress the desires in his heart, and had gone on a crazy rampage. He'd killed Grand Magus Ferguson of the Church of Light on the spot and heavily injured the Patriarch of the House of Menlo, Adam. This string of news had already spread throughout the Valley of Sunshine. As one of the 3 heavyweights of the Dark Mantle, there was no reason for Candide not to know about this matter. Han Sho looked at Candide in silence. Since Candide already knew about this matter, Han Sho had nothing to say. In addition, Han Sho had long since prepared himself, knowing that Candide would definitely mention this matter. Seeing that Han Sho was silent, Candide stared straight at Han Sho and said in a low voice, "I don't know how you killed Ferguson. I'm afraid that even if I did it myself, I wouldn't have the confidence to kill him. Ferguson's death is one thing, but the Church of Light's influence is enormous. You'll have endless troubles in the future. In addition, I heard that you also released the Lost Magic Corpse Resurrection. I think the Calamity Church will also come looking for you. These 2 churches have a wide range of followers throughout the Profound Continent. If they want to deal with you, they have dozens of methods. How do you plan to deal with them? Different situations call for different measures. If they dare to make a move against me, I'll kill them all until they give up." Han Shuo's face was callous. Killing intent naturally surged from his body as he said in an ice-cold voice. Since Candide already knew about this matter, Han Shuo didn't need to hide it. When killing intent overflowed from his body, a character of Candide's level immediately reacted. Nodding his head, Candide said with a gloomy face, "I believe that you have considerable strength. However, the Church of Light doesn't only have one Ferguson. If they want to deal with you, they don't even need to do it themselves. They only need to exert pressure on His Majesty. I believe that His Majesty the King won't offend the Church of Light for a minor character like you." After hearing these words, Han Shuo immediately became silent. With Han Shuo's current intelligence, he naturally understood Candide's meaning very quickly. Taking a deep breath, Candide said, "You were personally brought into the Dark Mantle by me. I'm very happy that you have such great strength. In addition, you now have proof of being an Archmage. I have an idea for you." His heart stirred. Han Shuo asked in astonishment, "What idea?" When he had killed Ferguson, Han Shuo had already mentally prepared himself. However, Han Shuo didn't have any misgivings. If the Lancelot Empire were to betray him under the pressure of the Church of Light, Han Shuo was confident that he could use the Cemetery of Death to escape. However, the road ahead would be a bit more difficult. Now that he heard that Ferguson had an idea, Han Shuo naturally wanted to know if there was a better way to deal with the two sides. Whether it's the Church of Light or the Calamity Church, they are both religious organizations. Although they have extensive influence, they still don't have the strength to sway our Lancelot Empire. Among them, the Church of Light is in the open and is a bit more difficult to deal with. However, as long as you can prove that your strength is strong enough to make His Majesty feel that you have the value to disregard the Church of Light, based on my understanding of His Majesty, he won't care about the pressure from the Church of Light. As long as His Majesty is willing to protect you, even the Church of Light won't dare to do anything to you in the Lancelot Empire. After all, the Church of Light isn't strong enough to destroy our Lancelot Empire." Candide looked at Han Shuo and gave him advice. After hearing Candide's words, Han Shuo was suddenly enlightened. That's right, the most important thing for a country was talents, especially talents with potential. They were crucial to a country's future prospects. The reason why the Lancelot Empire was able to establish itself and prosper for so many years was because of Ermite Cotton, the Archmage. A sacred magus could release a terrifying forbidden magic spell and directly destroy an entire city with a single spell. An even more powerful magus with the strength of a demigod could cause unimaginable destruction. It was precisely because of the existence of Ermite Cotton that the Lancelot Empire was able to flourish so much. After so many years, a transcendent expert was still the most important resource for a country, especially the existences in the sacred world, such as sacred swordsmen, sacred magi, and sacred knights. These experts were the most important basis to measure a country's strength. If Han Shuo could prove to His Majesty that he had the strength to become such an existence, then His Majesty would definitely not care about the threat of the Church of Light, and would do his best to ensure his safety. "Candide, what do you mean?" After being reminded by Candide, Han Shuo already understood. However, he still couldn't figure out how to do it. After all, he couldn't just directly tell others that he was very strong, could he? The simplest way is to challenge and determine your own strength by challenging the strong. I've only recently heard that you've been hanging out with Lawrence in the Northern Guard. How could Lawrence hide his intentions from me? The boundary he had set up before the conversation was removed. Only then did he urge, "Hurry up and give the certificate to that kid, he's very anxious." "Coming!" Ares responded and walked down from upstairs with a beaming smile. He arrived in front of Han Shuo and handed over the small booklet proving his identity to Han Shuo. He said with a smile, "Congratulations, Brian. With the certification of our magic association, you are now an Archmage." "Thank you," Han Shuo replied with a smile. He glanced at the gloomy Candide and cursed in his heart before going downstairs. "Congratulations, you're really amazing. You've become a rare Archmage necromancer at such a young age." the girl in charge of reception said in admiration when he reached the first floor. Han Shuo flashed a radiant smile at the girl, nodded, and left the Guild of Magic. The girl blushed under Han Shuo's brilliant smile. Her heartbeat was much faster than normal. She thought to herself, he's so tall, and so handsome and young. With a height of 1.9 meters, Han Shuo had a strange demonic aura due to his training in magical yuan. It was only natural that he would attract the attention of the opposite sex. My first target is Colbert. He has the strength of a sword master, and has raped and killed 7 girls. He currently lives in the outskirts of Bimson City, and is the mayor of Billow Town. He has the title of Baron. Han Shuo walked out of the Magic Association and took out Candid's piece of paper. He skimmed through it, and walked towards the Imperial Transportation Matrix with a cold smile. Chapter 279. Lancelot Empire. On the outskirts of Bimson City, a small town called Billow. The mayor of the small town, Colbert, was leisurely humming a tune as he basked in the sunlight. He lay lazily on the tallest and most luxurious balcony of the town, squinting his eyes as he peered at the young ladies walking back and forth in the town. Although the town wasn't large, Colbert could still earn close to a few thousand gold coins in taxes each year. With this money, Colbert could live a comfortable life. When he was in the mood, he could use force and authority to sleep with the women of the town, and no one would dare say anything to him. This was because he was a baron of the empire, the mayor of Billow Town, and a powerful sword master. These conditions added together made him the local tyrant of the town. Sigh, when will these days come to an end? A commoner had just returned from the mountain forest and complained in a low voice. I heard that Root's wife was raped by Colbert again. This is the 9th time this year. We should leave Billow Town as soon as possible. There's no way to live. Another commoner sighed and said helplessly. We should be careful if we leave. We'll die a terrible death if he finds out. What a sin! Excuse me, is this Billow Town? A question suddenly sounded while the 2 commoners were conversing in low voices. It was an extremely tall and handsome young man who asked with a brilliant smile. That's right, young man. What are you doing in Billow Town? One of the commoners asked, puzzled. Your mayor is called Colbert, right? Han Shuo smiled and asked again. Nodding, the commoner's expression changed as he said in disgust. You know our mayor? What do you do? I'm looking for him for a few matters. Where does he live? Han Shuo had a rough idea of what was going on when he saw that the commoner immediately revealed a disgusted expression when he heard that he was looking for Colbert. Go straight ahead. The largest and most luxurious house is where he lives, the other commoner replied. He pulled the one who had an unfriendly expression away from Han Shuo and whispered, Do you want to die? Look at how tall he is. He must be a friend of that bastard Colbert. Don't get yourself into trouble. As the 2 of them spoke, they quickly left, looking at Han Shuo with disgust and disdain. Han Shuo's ears were sharp enough to hear everything. He thought to himself, this Colbert is truly devoid of conscience. Even after becoming the mayor of this town, he probably hasn't stopped doing bad things. He quickly walked to the largest house and said to the guard in front of the door, I request to see Mayor Corbett. Who are you? The guard in front of the door frowned as he looked at Han Shuo and replied. The 3 demons circled around the entire house. Han Shuo observed the entire situation and said with a smile, I heard that Mayor Corbett is a powerful swordsman. This time, I have come specially to challenge him. Please help me report this. The mayor will not be interested in you. You should leave as soon as possible. The guard replied bluntly. He had no intention of reporting at all. Taking a step forward, Han Shuo punched out, and the door suddenly shattered into pieces. He shouted at the top of his lungs, Colbert, you piece of trash. As a swordsman, do you not dare to accept my challenge? Brat, are you purposely causing trouble? The 2 guards in front of the door were immediately shocked. They drew their swords and were about to make a move. Slap! Slap! The 2 guards didn't even see it clearly before they were slapped a few steps back by Han Shuo. Han Sho looked at the two guards who were covering their faces with their hands and said leisurely with a smile that wasn't a smile, "You two better not seek death." Han Sho shouted at the top of his lungs, his voice echoing throughout half of Billowtown. When the villagers heard that someone had come to challenge Colbert, they all stopped whatever they were doing and came over to watch, no matter what they were doing. Colbert, who had been squinting his eyes and looking around, obviously heard Han Sho's shout. He shouted angrily from the balcony of a tall building. "Where did this brat come from? How dare he come to my Billowtown to cause trouble?" Following Colbert's shout, a dozen or so militiamen walked out of his house. Colbert, who was wearing a set of shiny silver armor, walked out of the broken door with a cold expression. "What are you looking at? You damned commoners, get lost." After Colbert walked out of the door, he first glared at some of the surrounding civilians and cursed. He then glared at Han Sho and said, "Brat, are you purposely here to cause trouble?" Baron Colbert had quite a reputation in his early years. "You have the strength of a swordsman. I also practice swordsmanship. This time, I passed by Billowtown and would like to ask for guidance from Lord Baron. I wonder if Lord Baron has the guts to accept?" Han Sho smiled as he looked at Colbert. Colbert glared at Han Sho and said angrily, "Brat, who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth? You actually dare to challenge me? You are indeed tired of living. I accept your challenge, but don't blame me if you die." "Of course," Han Sho readily agreed. "All of you get lost. Watch how I kill him." Colbert waved his hand and the surrounding militiamen dispersed. Colbert took out a shiny long sword and took a deep breath, suddenly calming down. "Young man, I'll let you attack first." Colbert calmly looked at Han Sho as he got into a fighting stance. "Very well." Han Sho didn't delay. He calmly walked towards Colbert with his bare fists and punched out in front of Colbert. "Eh?" Colbert was a bit startled when he saw that Han Sho didn't draw his sword. But when Han Sho punched out and didn't see any traces of fighting aura, Colbert was even more shocked. When they arrived at a spacious courtyard, the guard said, "Please wait a moment, I'll go inform Lord Deborah." After a while, a slightly plump, short woman in her 40s walked out with a frown. She wore a luxurious magic robe and had an azure space ring on her hand. She looked suspiciously at Han Sho and said, "Who are you? I don't think I know you." Nodding, Han Sho said with a smile, "Of course. Although this is our first time meeting, I've heard of your great name for a long time. This time, I wanted to consult you on some magical knowledge. I hope you can give me some pointers." When Deborah heard Han Sho's words, she waved her hand and said impatiently, "I don't have time for you. And here I was wondering who it was. Leave while it's still early. Don't make me angry, you damned brat." Glancing at the guard, Deborah reprimanded, "Next time, ask clearly who you are before bringing you in. Don't think that I know mages. I don't have time for this kind of immature brat." As she spoke, Deborah ignored Han Sho's existence and went straight back into the house, intending to continue fiddling with a few new magic potions. "Ugly old hag, are you afraid to accept my challenge? Or do you think that you can't be looked at for long because of your ugliness?" Still wearing a smile on his face, Han Sho repeated his old tricks and used malicious words to provoke her. Sure enough, when Deborah heard Han Sho's malicious words, she immediately turned around furiously and glowered at Han Sho. Smiling coldly, she said, "All right, I accept your challenge and send you on your way." A dim light flashed, and a dark blue magic staff appeared in her hand. As she chanted a spell, 3 5-meter-tall watermen appeared out of thin air and rushed towards Han Sho. 5 ice alls formed as the watermen approached. The sharp ice alls carried a glaring cold light and stabbed diagonally towards Han Sho from the roof. "Interesting." Han Sho let out a strange laugh and shook the white bone staff in his hand. He quickly chanted a spell and a white bone shield suddenly appeared beside him. The 5 ice alls that appeared a step later were actually a step faster than the watermen and directly hit the white bone shield. The huge impact fiercely collided with the white bone shield, causing ice shards to scatter and cracks to appear on the white bone shield. Unhurriedly retreating from the white bone shield's range, the white bone staff in Han Shuo's hand flashed once again. 2 hate warriors, 1 evil knight, a dozen zombies, 20 skeletal warriors, and a group of flying gargoyles appeared out of thin air one after another, filling the courtyard. An evil knight riding on a fire-breathing warhorse thrust out a huge bone spear in his hand. A 5-meter-tall waterman in front of him was directly pierced through by the bone spear. The evil knight lifted the skeletal warhorse and spat out a stream of raging flames from the warhorse's mouth. The waterman that was riddled with holes squeaked and emitted smoke as it dissipated. You're actually a necromancer!" Bora was taken aback and shouted in a somewhat panicked manner. In a battle between mages of the same rank, necromancers were at a disadvantage against light mages. In addition to this, necromancers could rely on their powerful summoned creatures to hold a huge advantage against mages of other elements. If it wasn't for the disappearance of the Necromancer Codex, necromancers wouldn't be as few as they were now. When the canopy of necromancy covered the sky, the speed and strength of the dark creatures greatly increased under the cover of the canopy of necromancy. The remaining 2 watermen were directly drowned by the large number of dark creatures as they charged through the cover of the canopy of necromancy. In particular, the evil knight that Han Shuo had summoned took the lead and charged directly towards Water Archmage Deborah with a terrifying force. The gargoyles circling in the sky followed closely behind. Under the cover of the canopy of necromancy, their shadows flickered and flashed, appearing so nimble and strange. Han Shuo didn't use the Little Skull, the Earth Elite Zombie, or the Wood Elite Zombie. He also didn't use any demonic arts. Relying purely on necromancy magic, Han Shuo completely held the upper hand. In a battle between archmages of the same rank, with the mental strength of a Grand Magus, no one was a match for Han Shuo other than light archmages. Even if his opponent was a light archmage, the 3 dark creatures immune to light magic, the Little Skull, the Earth Elite Zombie, and the Wood Elite Zombie could still be easily killed by Han Shuo. Therefore, in a battle of magic of the same rank, even if he didn't use demonic arts, Han Shuo was still invincible. Chapter 280. Damn it! Bora cursed in a low voice. She obviously felt that something was wrong and hastily retreated into the room. Her short and fat body was actually quite nimble as she planned to obstruct the dark creature's charge inside the room. The high-level water magic, ice spell, was released. A white mist enshrouded the room as a sparkling and translucent ice wall sealed the door. The ice wall emitted a cold white mist under the illumination of the sunlight. The evil knight rode on his skeletal warhorse and raised a bone spur that was even larger than his body. He charged towards the ice wall, raising his bone spur high and fiercely thrusting it at the ice wall. Clang! Surprisingly, this ice wall formed by the frost spell actually had a tough defense. When the huge bone spikes hit the ice wall, they made a huge impact. The ice wall was only pierced by the sharp bone spikes, and the ice wall's defense did not collapse in one fell swoop. Ice blade slash! A loud cry came from Bora's mouth from inside the room. The cold wind howled and snow fluttered in the air. One after another, ice blades spun and shot towards the dark creatures in the courtyard. When the lower-level skeletal warriors were hit by the ice blades, their weak skeletons shattered one after another. Even the spiraling gargoyles fell one after another under the ice blades' attacks. However, the higher-level zombie warriors and hate warriors still stood tall even after being cut by the ice blades. They walked step by step towards the room Bora was in and began to attack the ice wall together with the evil knight. Under the cover of the canopy of necromancy, Han Shuo wore a cold smile as he stood proudly in the middle of the courtyard. He leisurely watched the dark creatures attack Bora and inwardly experienced the most appropriate way to use necromancy magic. Clang! Finally, the ice wall shattered under the impact of the evil knight's huge bone spur. Soon after, the evil knight charged into Bora's room along with his skeletal warhorse. The 2 hate warriors and several zombie warriors also entered and occupied the room's windows in an instant. I surrender! I surrender! Inside, Bora turned pale with fright and suddenly cried out involuntarily. When the evil knight broke through the ice wall's obstruction and rushed into the room with his undead army, Bora knew that it would be difficult for her to salvage the situation. Bora felt an instinctive fear when she was stared at by the evil knight's malevolent and merciless eyes. She immediately screamed to save her life. So! A dozen or so bone spears shot in through the window, 2 of which directly attacked Bora's back. Before Bora could react, they directly penetrated her short and stout body and carried her towards the evil knight. The evil knight raised his huge bone spear high up. When the bone spear fell, Bora's head flew high up into the air. A mouthful of warm blood sprinkled down and fell into the still smoking potion bottle. The potion bottle was splashed by the warm blood and suddenly burst open. Murder! Murder! When the guard who had brought Han Shu in heard the mournful scream, he understood that Bora must have been killed. Losing his head out of fear, he screamed as he rushed to the back of the courtyard. Through the spying of the demons, Han Shu noticed that there was a group of people in the distance who were swiftly heading over. This time, his target was only Bora. Han Shu didn't waste any time. When Bora died, he immediately recalled his necromancy and the mental strength he used to maintain the canopy of necromancy. He then used the levitation spell to leave the courtyard. For 5 days in a row, Han Shu used the transportation matrix to travel back and forth between the various cities of the Empire to challenge experts. Not only was he victorious in every battle, but he also killed his opponents on the spot. His fierce reputation quickly spread throughout the Lancelot Empire. Under Candide's deliberate embellishment, Han Shu's identity was slowly recognized by some of the experts of the Empire. Many nobles had heard of this young expert's deeds and expressed great interest in him. Lancelot Empire's Imperial Palace, in a luxurious hall that was heavily guarded, His Majesty the Empire, King Uhtred Lancelot, was wearing a loose robe, sitting on the throne, waiting for something. Uhtred was almost 60 years old. Due to his excessive debauchery in his youth, his body was growing weaker and weaker. Although his frame was large, he appeared somewhat emaciated. Although his hair and skin had been treated with a special magic potion, they still appeared jet black and glossy. Unfortunately, his complexion was still not good. "Your Majesty, Lord Candide has arrived!" Suddenly, a guard walked in from outside and said softly. This guard was wearing a shining armor, appearing calm and callous. His entire body had the calm bearing of a top expert. From the insignia on his armor, it could be seen that he was a powerful sky rider. "Let him in!" Uhtred indifferently ordered when he heard that Candide had arrived. After a while, Candide walked in with a gloomy face. He opened his mouth and said softly, "Your subject Candide greets your Majesty. Sit. I heard that you have a kid under your command who has been very dazzling these past 2 days. What's going on?" Uhtred glanced at Candide and asked indifferently. "He's called Brian. I was the one who introduced him to the Dark Mantle. This kid's strength is extraordinary and his mind is calm. He's helped the Dark Mantle accomplish several major things not long after joining. Oh, even Ere Mike Cotton's notebook was brought back from the Dark Forest by him. He's a very rare talent." Candide was still incomparably respectful after sitting down as he opened his mouth to explain. "So he's called Brian." Interesting. I remember that Red Archbishop Koss of the Church of Light just sent someone over yesterday to ask for Brian. I didn't expect to hear news of him today. Candide, oh Candide, isn't this a bit too much of a coincidence?" Uhtred's voice sounded very cheerful, as if he was talking to a friend about old times. Candide was startled and hurriedly explained, "Please forgive me, Your Majesty. This matter was arranged by me with the goal of eradicating some factors that are detrimental to the stability of the country. Brian's strength is extraordinary. Not only has he passed the Magus examination of the Mage Association, he's also grasped a miraculous martial technique. He's a very rare talent. Our country really needs young experts like him." Uhtred snorted coldly and looked at Candide. Candide, do you think it's worth it for me to become enemies with the Church of Light for this kid? Your subject thinks it's worth it. Brian is only 18 years old this year. He entered the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force a little over a year ago. In less than 2 years, he went from a magic apprentice to a necromancy archmage. In addition, his martial technique is also very outstanding. This kind of talent's future potential is limitless. It's only because he practices necromancy magic and grasps some knowledge that's detrimental to the Church of Light that the Church of Light has deliberately targeted him. In the Valley of Sunshine, there was a Light Grand Magus named Ferguson who was killed by Brian, ultimately incurring the wrath of the Church of Light. To be able to kill a Light Grand Magus is sufficient proof of his strength. In addition, the most important thing is that he's still young and has unlimited prospects for development. Your subject believes that such a talent cannot be let go. Even if it means offending the Church of Light, it's still worth it. Candide respectfully replied. A light flashed in Uhtred's eyes when he heard Candide's words. He straightened his body slightly and stared at Candide, saying, in less than 2 years, he became an archmage necromancer from a magic apprentice, and was even able to kill a Light Grand Magus. Candide, are you sure this information is true? Your Majesty, you also know that my wife is the Dean of the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force. I can confirm that this information is absolutely true. Originally, I also suspected that his strength wasn't enough to kill a Light Grand Magus. That's why I issued the order to challenge some notorious experts. However, according to my information, he indeed has this kind of strength. The most difficult thing is that such a genius has a clean background, and has a very good sense of belonging to the Empire. He's also willing to work for the Empire. In the future, I believe that his accomplishments will certainly be even greater. Perhaps he can become a figure like Corel Ascot. Oh, right, Brian is also the boyfriend of Sacred Sword Master Corel Ascot's most beloved female disciple, Phoebe. Candide continued. Oh, you're saying that he has some relationship with Corel Ascot? Uhtred was startled and asked Candide in astonishment. Correct. Not only that, he's also a good friend of His Highness Lawrence. You also know that His Highness Lawrence is studying some war strategies at the Knight Academy, and is also Corel Ascot's disciple. Due to his relationship with Phoebe and Brian's good relationship, Brian's contribution in exposing Bob Asher's plot in Valence City was the greatest. Candide saw Uhtred's startled expression and once again struck while the iron was hot. Uhtred couldn't help but turn silent after hearing Candide's words. He thought for a while and then said, So it's like this. From what you've said, it seems that this Brian is a bit interesting. Oh, I heard that great sword master Liakane of the Brute Merchant Alliance has arrived at Asen City and has consecutively defeated 3 experts of the same level from our empire. He's quite arrogant and proud of himself. Since you said that this Brian is very powerful, then let him challenge Liakane. If he can defeat Liakane, then it will prove that he's truly a young genius. That way, not only will I be willing to offend the Church of Light for him, I'll also immediately give him a noble title. Humph, this crazy swordsman Liakane has always had a vile reputation. He only fled to our Lancelot Empire because he offended Sacred Magus Reynold Dyla in Brute. Such a despicable escape, he actually dares to be so impudent. He's truly courting death. Your subject understands. Candide was immediately startled when he heard that Uhtred wanted Hans Shaw to challenge Liakane. After a moment of silence, he sighed inwardly, and could only helplessly agree. Chapter 281. Hans Shaw had been very busy these past few days. He had used transportation matrices to travel through more than half of the Lancelot Empire. 3 archmages, 4 swordsmen, and 1 great sword master had all been killed by Hans Shaw in the name of challenges. In the beginning, the challenges could be considered successful. This was because Hans Shaw's age was too deceptive. His opponents often thought that Hans Shaw was nothing to be afraid of and would angrily accept the challenge after being provoked by Hans Shaw's malicious words. However, as time went on, Hans Shaw's repeated successes spread far and wide. Many experts began to make connections with the identities of those who were killed and began to plot against him. In the end, there were still 3 experts on the list who had suddenly disappeared without a trace. Even the Dark Mantle couldn't find them with all their might. Once Han Sho arrived in a city, all the experts in the city would be panic-stricken. No matter if they had done anything shameful or not, they were all afraid that Han Sho would come knocking on their door to challenge them. Thus, they all disappeared in the name of traveling. These people were also helpless. After all, those who had died in Han Sho's hands in the past few days were all experts. If they didn't accept Han Sho's challenge, it would greatly affect their reputation. But if they accepted the challenge, they might lose their lives. They had no choice but to find an excuse to hide. When a great sword master died in Han Sho's hands, the young expert Brian's infamy reached its peak. The experts on the list all disappeared one by one. Under Candid's notice, they could only return to Asan City to await further orders. Lord Candide, it's not that I didn't try my best. The 3 people on the list have disappeared without a trace. It looks like we can only wait until you find them. In a small tavern in the northern part of the city, Han Sho and Candide were in a private room. It was Han Sho who spoke first. You've done very well. His Majesty has already heard of your deeds. Let's ignore those 3 for now. There's a matter that's giving me a headache. If you can complete this matter, His Majesty will protect you and bestow upon you the title of nobility. Candide frowned as he took a sip of tea from the teacup in his hand. Oh? What's the matter? Han Sho asked in a daze. Liu Kane of the Brute Merchant Alliance also has the strength of a great sword master. This person is known as the Mad Swordsman. His character is vile and his character is cruel, but he just so happens to have extraordinary strength. Currently, he has arrived at our Asan city. In the past few days, he has challenged 3 great sword masters of Asan city and won all of them. After winning, he still spoke rudely, which has caused His Majesty to be extremely disgusted. His Majesty wants you to challenge Liu Kane. As long as you can defeat Liu Kane, His Majesty will protect you regardless of the pressure from the Church of Light and give you a noble title. However, Liu Kane's strength is extraordinary. He already possessed the strength of a great sword master 10 years ago. According to the Dark Mantle's information, this Liu Kane is very close to the First Prince, His Highness Charles. Because of your relationship with Lawrence, I'm afraid that if you can't beat him, you might lose your life. Candide seemed to be really worried about Han Sho as he spoke with some worry. Where does this Liu Kane person currently live? Han Sho was calm and unafraid as he asked Candide with a smile. In the garden house in the northern part of the city. The garden house is the property of the First Prince, Charles. Others might not know, but the Dark Mantle naturally knows. It was also because of the garden house that we guessed that he is related to the First Prince. What, do you plan to challenge Liu Kane? Both of them are great sword masters, but the difference in strength between someone who has just entered the realm and someone who has been in this realm for 10 years is extremely large. Moreover, Liu Kane is known as the Mad Swordsman and is extremely difficult to deal with. Candide cried out in surprise. Don't worry, I'll take care of him. Han Sho drank a mouthful of tea and directly stood up. He said with a smile, To be honest, I'm almost addicted to the challenges I've been facing recently. Han Sho had been running all over the place these past few days and had challenged a number of experts. He felt that his strength was on the verge of a breakthrough. The bloodless realm required one to quickly progress through slaughter, especially when fighting against experts. It was even faster to improve in the bloodlust realm. After 7 or 8 battles in a row, Han Sho had challenged archmages and sword masters, all of whom were experts with some reputation. The last person he challenged was a great sword master, which gave Han Sho a great sense of crisis. It was also through that battle that Han Sho felt that his bloodthirsty realm was showing signs of breaking through. At this point, Han Sho definitely didn't need to use necromancy magic or the Little Skull's Earth Elite Zombie or Wood Elite Zombie. With just his bloodlust realm demonic arts, he could directly confront a great sword master. If he didn't use his advantage in magic, Han Shuo's strength in the bloodlust realm was equal to that of a great sword master. Liu Kang might be a bit more tyrannical than an average great sword master. Perhaps Han Shuo in the bloodlust realm would encounter some difficulties, but if Han Shuo used the Little Skull Earth and would elite zombies, Han Shuo believed that he would be able to successfully kill Liu Kang. Therefore, Han Shuo didn't mind Candid's worries at all. Be careful, this person is extremely dangerous. He's famous in the Brute Merchant Alliance for being difficult to deal with, so don't lower your guard. Candide was still worried as he watched Han Shuo walk towards the door. Understood, I'll go first. Han Shuo responded and walked outside. Brian! As soon as he walked out of the tavern, Emily's voice came from a carriage at the corner of the street. Chester, dressed as a coachman, had a cautious expression as he waved at Han Shuo. The Dark Mantle's intelligence network was everywhere. Add to that the relationship between Emily and Candide, and it wouldn't be difficult for her to find Han Shuo. Han Shuo also understood that Emily would definitely come to find him, so he wasn't surprised at all when he heard Emily's voice. Looking left and right, Han Shuo suddenly discovered that there was another carriage parked in the distance. The knights in front of the carriage were all familiar faces. The curtain of the carriage was lifted, revealing Lawrence's face. At this moment, Lawrence was looking at Han Shuo with an excited expression, as if he had a lot to say to him. Han Shuo first walked towards Emily and said, "Wait for me for a moment." As soon as he finished speaking, Han Shuo quickly walked in front of Lawrence's carriage and exclaimed in a low voice, "Why are you here?" "Heh, I accidentally discovered Madame Emily's carriage today. Seeing that she was hurrying over here, my heart was moved and I followed her. I didn't think that I would actually find you." Lawrence let out a strange chuckle and said to Han Shuo. Han Shuo understood that Lawrence might know about his relationship with Emily. He couldn't help but roll his eyes at Lawrence and said, "All right, what did you call me here for?" "Haha, I heard that you've been continuously challenging experts recently. You're quite famous now. I didn't think that you brat would stop hiding your abilities and truly start showing your talent. That's for the best. I've been to the palace twice in the past few days, and His Majesty asked a few things about you. He seems to be very interested in you. This is a very good sign." Lawrence appeared to be very high-spirited as he spoke with a smile. "Of course I'm paying attention. His Majesty wants me to challenge Liu Kang. Am I not planning to get rid of him?" Han Shuo said indifferently. Lawrence was shocked when he heard these words. Then, he became ecstatic and said, "Liu Kang is first Prince Charles's man. I can confirm this through my channels. Brian, do you have the confidence to get rid of him? What do you think?" Han Shuo looked at Lawrence with a smile that wasn't quite a smile and asked in reply, "Of course I do. You're very mysterious, I believe in you. How about this, since you want to challenge Liu Kang, I'll help you and exaggerate this matter. As long as you can defeat Liu Kang, your notoriety can be corrected. Heh, after all, Liu Kang is a member of the Brute Merchant Alliance. No one in our country will like him." Lawrence said with a sinister smile. "Do as you see fit. If there's nothing else, I'll look for you after I get rid of Liu Kang," Han Shuo said. It's fine. Go do your thing." Lawrence looked in Emily's direction and said with a sly smile. From Lawrence's expression and words, Han Shuo understood that he should already know about his relationship with Emily. This was all because Han Shuo and Emily were hiding behind a fake mountain at their family's banquet last time. Later on, the operation in Valen City made him even more certain of this matter. However, with Han Shuo's current relationship with Lawrence, Han Shuo naturally believed that Lawrence would keep his mouth shut. After all, if this matter was exposed, it wouldn't benefit Lawrence at all. "All right, I'll be going first," Han Shuo responded and turned to walk in Emily's direction. "Let's go." Han Shuo arrived at Chester's place and gave him some instructions before entering Emily's carriage. "Oh, Brian, it's too magical. That pill is too magical." As soon as Han Shuo entered the carriage, Emily suddenly threw herself into Han Shuo's arms and hugged Han Shuo tightly. She took the initiative to offer her fragrant lips, appearing to be extremely emotional. Chester's expression was the same as usual. He pretended not to have heard anything and started the carriage with a serious expression, slowly driving it into the depths of the street. After Chester's carriage left, Candide gazed at the direction of the departing carriage from within the shadows of a nearby corner. He muttered, "I was wondering why Emily would help him so much. So that's the reason. This kid is quite bold in his lust. As expected, he's hooked up with Emily. Damn it, he's actually a playboy." Chapter 282. In the garden house in the northern part of the city, the garden house was filled with palm trees and was brimming with the scent of spring. The unique courtyard was surrounded by fragrant flowers and plants. Several maids carefully shuttled back and forth between the flowers, trimming and watering the fragrant flowers. On a soft lawn, eldest Prince Charles was squinting his eyes as he talked with a boorish-looking man with 2 crisscrossing scars on his neck. The man was about 1.75 meters tall, but his hands and feet were large and he was incomparably sturdy. His eyes shone with the light of a savage beast. "Mr. Leah, you shouldn't have challenged 3 great sword masters as soon as you arrived in Asen City. After all, you came from the Brute Merchant Alliance. Our country is an extremely xenophobic one. If my father knew that you were one of my people, it might affect his impression of me." Eldest Prince Charles frowned in displeasure. He was very angry at Leah Kane's unauthorized actions. Leah Kane grinned and said arrogantly, "Your Highness, although I've pledged my allegiance to you in Lancelot Empire this time, I don't necessarily have to listen to everything you say. First of all, I'm a swordsman. Since I've come to Lancelot Empire, according to my habit, I must exchange pointers with the local experts. Otherwise, how can I improve my swordsmanship? Damn, what a boorish fellow. If you have the guts, go challenge Sacred Sword Master Corel Ascot. I'll see how you die." Charles inwardly cursed, and his expression became even more unsightly. He said to Leah Kane, "Let's forget about this matter. I hope you'll tell me before you do anything next time. Do you still remember that Brian I told you about last time? He's the one I wanted you to help me kill?" Leah Kane was startled. He thought for a moment and nodded. "Oh, he's the kid you mentioned who practices a special martial art? Why, has he appeared in Asen City? Do you want me to go kill him today?" Shaking his head with a wry smile, eldest Prince Charles said, "The situation has changed. Brian's reputation has soared after he challenged several experts in the past few days since he left Asen City. I don't know who released the news that Brian returned to Asen City with the goal of challenging you. As soon as this news came out, all the nobles and experts in Asen City began to pay attention to it. You've been cultivating in the garden house all this time, so you might not know, but now even my father seems to be interested in this matter. It's not very appropriate for you to secretly kill Brian at this time. I think it's better for you to take the initiative, directly challenge him, and then kill him. This way, no one can say anything. What do you think?" "No, I've decided not to. Who do you think I, Leah Kane, am? How can I lower myself to challenge a brat who's still wet behind his ears? Humph, if he's interested in challenging me, then I'll gladly accept the challenge. But I absolutely can't go to his door and challenge an unknown brat." Leah Kane resolutely refused without the slightest leeway. Charles, who was sitting in his chair, fiercely grabbed the armrest and cursed inwardly. He thought, if you don't have a bit of strength, then damn it, I'll immediately have someone kill you just because of your attitude. You're just a brute, yet you dare to contradict me repeatedly? All right then, many people are paying attention to this matter. There are even some people loitering outside the garden house these past 2 days. I'm guessing they're waiting for Brian to come and challenge you. It's not convenient for me to come and find you, so be careful. If Brian comes, you must kill him immediately to avoid future troubles." Charles was a bit annoyed. He stood up from his chair and said to Leah Kane, "Don't worry, he'll die without a doubt if he dares to come. Humph, youngsters these days really don't know the difference between life and death, to actually be so arrogant and conceited." I'll let him understand just how strong his seniors are. Leah Kane snorted coldly. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Under the influence of those with ulterior motives, this news quickly spread to every corner of Awson City. At first, only a few of Awson City's experts and nobles received this news, but when someone elevated this matter to the glory of the nation, even the commoners heard of this news. In this way, Han Shuo's birth and origins were gradually torn apart and revealed to the world. A young slave, relying on his astonishing talent, had been accepted into the Empire's best Babylon Academy of Magic and Force as an exception. In less than 2 years he had advanced from a lowly magic apprentice to a rare archmage necromancer, and was even equipped with a miraculous martial technique. All of this news added together confirmed Han Shuo's name as a genius. While Awson City was abuzz with discussion about this matter, a few large merchant guilds had already begun to secretly place their bets. The crazy gamblers expressed their intense attention to this matter. Among them, the matter of the Buzz Merchant Guild betting a huge sum of money to oppose Cameron's merchant alliance was something that no one knew about. Late at night, Awson City's west side. Of the 4 major blocks, the west side of the city was the dirtiest and poorest. This could be said to be a gathering place for commoners. Trash was everywhere on the streets, and flies and bedbugs were everywhere. A few scantily clad beggars were curled up in a dark corner, dozing off. A stench lingered throughout the year. However, no matter how poor a place was, the moonlight wouldn't favor one over another. The cool and bright moonlight shone down, elongating the shadows of Han Shuo's party longer and longer. The lights in the surroundings flickered, and a few suppressed sobs could be faintly heard coming from the simple and crude houses. I really didn't want to come to this place. Chester's expression was heavy as he sighed. Although Emily stayed in the carriage, her black eyebrows were deeply furrowed. Her tender, white, and smooth skin was as bright and clean as white jade. She wore a jeweled ornament on her head and a well-fitting silk dress on her body. She seemed out of place in the environment of the west side of the city. Emily had seen Chester's information and knew that he was born a commoner. In his early years, before he entered the Dark Mantle, he had lived in the west side of the city for a period of time. However, Chester obviously didn't miss those days. Thinking about it, no one would miss such a place. All right, let's leave as soon as we finish our business. Every country has its rich and poor. This has never changed since time immemorial. We have no way to change all of this. Han Shuo sat in the carriage and lightly shouted through the curtain. Behind the carriage that Han Shuo sat in, a small troop of 100 knights followed at a moderate pace. In the narrow streets, the troop of 100 knights formed a long line. Hurry up, we don't have much time. Don't complain, Emily also urged. Chester didn't say anything else. He skillfully drove the carriage along the quiet streets. After passing through this street, he headed straight for the dirtiest and most remote area of the west side of the city. After a while, Chester slowly stopped the carriage in a place where sewage was everywhere, and the stench assailed his nostrils. He turned around and said, "Lady Emily, those dilapidated buildings in front of us are the place mentioned in the information." Inside the carriage, Emily changed into a black robe that covered her entire body in front of Han Shuo, concealing her identity as a high-ranking member of the Dark Mantle. She slowly got off the carriage and looked ahead. She said to Han Shuo, "According to the information, it should be those buildings in front of us. The enemy is from the Angela Empire. Their leader is called Yoland, and he seems to be a sky rider." Nodding his head, Han Shuo released 3 demons and slowly snuck inside. He walked towards the troop of 100 knights at the back and instructed an officer. "Don't act rashly and alert them. Spread out and surround all those buildings. Approach them slowly. If anyone tries to rush out, capture them alive if possible. If that doesn't work, kill them on the spot. No matter what, don't let a single one escape." "Yes," the officer replied and turned around to make a gesture to the knights behind him. The knights gradually spread out and surrounded the buildings from a distance. In the center of these knights, there were a few mages who were originally surrounded. Due to the knights' dispersal, they gradually revealed themselves. The mages of the Northern Guard's magic department were mostly intermediate, or advanced mages. There was only one Thunder Archmage. Before they came to carry out the mission, they had received Boris's orders to listen to Han Shuo's commands. Originally, these people were still a bit rebellious. However, after they learned of Han Shuo's identity from Boris, they all became well-behaved. Not a single one of them dared to disobey orders. In the span of a few days, Han Shuo had traveled across more than half of the Lancelot Empire, and challenged several notorious experts. In the end, all of them were killed by Han Shuo on the spot. This kind of cruel and merciless method cemented Han Shuo's fierce reputation, causing all of these people to become well-behaved. A person who could kill several experts wasn't someone they could afford to offend. Not to mention that he had received full authority from the highest commander of the Northern Guard, Boris. They wouldn't be foolish enough to provoke Han Shuo. All right, find your positions. It's best if you stay in the middle of the knights. Listen to my orders later and attack with your strongest magic. Han Shuo swept his gaze over the Thunder Archmage and instructed. Understood, Lord Brian. The Thunder Archmage nodded respectfully. He wasn't angry that Han Shuo had stolen his position as the leader of the magic department. Chapter 283. Before Han Shuo joined the Northern Guard, this lightning archmage named Korea was the leader of the Northern Guard's magic department. However, due to Han Shuo's appearance, he had no choice but to listen to Han Shuo's orders. Originally, Korea was a bit unwilling, but after Boris spoke to him privately, he immediately understood that Han Shuo had only joined the Northern Guard to accumulate military merits. He knew that the magic department of the Northern Guard was only a springboard for Han Shuo. With this, not only did he not have any complaints, but he also purposely tried to curry favor with Han Shuo, hoping that when Han Shuo soared in the future, he would be able to help him. Be careful, there are over 20 people on the other side, and all of them are quite strong. Han Shuo instructed the people behind him, then returned to Emily's side and reminded her softly. Understood, what do you think we should do? Emily nodded and asked for Han Shuo's opinion. When the 100 knights surround the area, immediately use magic to destroy all the obstacles. Capture these 20 or so experts if possible, or kill them all. As long as we can find the blueprint, this mission will be considered complete. Han Shuo thought for a moment, and said lowly. Let's do as you say. The Northern Guard seems to trust you more. You need to command them well so they don't mess up. In front of Han Shuo, Emily was already used to him being the leader and said obediently. All right then. Pay attention to Yoland, don't let him escape. Han Shuo replied as his body slowly floated into the air. Han Shuo was like a ghost as his body quickly weaved through the knights and mages. Relying on the omnidirectional vision of the three demons, Han Shuo continuously issued orders to the knights around him, telling them to abandon their horses and hide in different directions. Over 100 knights separated by 150 meters, slowly surrounding the opposite side. Standing proudly in the air, Han Shuo calmly commanded the knights and mages of the Northern Guard, arranging suitable people in every corner. Everyone softened their voices and slowly approached the dirty, dilapidated building. Gradually, the 150-meter distance shrank as the encirclement shrank. When the two sides were only 50 meters apart, Han Shuo suddenly waved his hand at Korea and the others. When Korea and the others saw Han Shuo's movements, they immediately started chanting magic spells with solemn expressions. Sir, we've been surrounded. I've heard strange sounds. A wind mage said anxiously to the tanned, tall, and muscular Yoland, who was riding a violent tattoo beast. How is this possible? Yoland, who was resting, abruptly sat up amidst a pile of weeds and hurriedly looked out the window. His expression changed drastically as he bellowed. Everyone, gather! Find an opportunity to break out! In this room, a group of more than 20 people calmly stood up when they heard this. One by one, they drew their swords and sabers and prepared to break out of this place. As the leader, Yoland remained calm in the face of such a predicament. His space ring glowed faintly as he took out the blueprint that he had painstakingly obtained and carefully placed it in a crack in the wall. Yoland said in a low voice, "The brothers that have come this time are not afraid of death. I will place the blueprint in that crack in the wall. If any of you are able to leave alive, you can wait until Asen City is no longer on guard and come back to take the blueprint back to the Empire. Do you understand?" "Don't worry, sir. We know what to do," the Wind Magician replied solemnly. The other people in the room all had resolute expressions on their faces. They were already prepared to sacrifice themselves. Suddenly, 5 bolts of lightning struck down from the sky. The zigzagging lightning illuminated the pitch-black night sky. A few walls of fire appeared around the room. The scorching heat assaulted them head-on. The earth began to rumble and tremble as sharp spikes abruptly appeared. Yoland and the others in the room understood that the attack had begun. They all jumped out from the windows and doors one by one. Under the attacks of the lightning, fire, snakes, and earth spikes, they scattered and began to break out of the encirclement. "Kill!" Han Shou's cold voice resounded throughout the night sky. Kalia's lightning bolts crashed down, bombarding the houses and causing them to explode one by one. 2 assassins who had rushed out were struck by a bolt of lightning, their bodies convulsing and collapsing on the spot. The 100 knights of the Northern Guard were all elites of the army, and all of them possessed the strength of a novice or intermediate knight. Under Han Shou's orders, they all lined up in an orderly fashion to block off the road. As soon as they discovered anyone charging in their direction, they would immediately and unceremoniously intercept them. Send 3 knights from the north to stop them. Korea, send 4 experts from the Ministry of Magic to attack the south. Yoland is in the west. He's a Sky Knight. Those in the west, be careful. Using the vision of the 3 demons, Han Shou calmly commanded. He was always able to accurately estimate the strength and number of the enemy and send out the corresponding experts to intercept the assassins. Under Han Shou's commands, Emily and Chester slowly approached the direction of Yoland's charge. As a thief, Chester wasn't strong in direct combat. Thus, he stayed with the knights in that direction to intercept them. Emily stood behind the knights, ready to attack with dark magic at any time. Damn it, how did the enemy know our movements so well? Yoland had everyone spread out. At the beginning, they had targeted some of the weaker areas and used their strongest forces to launch a surprise attack. Unfortunately, before they could even get close, the originally sparsely populated areas suddenly became heavily guarded, and the attackers ended up badly battered and bleeding. Under Han Shou's orders, the mages had released magic in unclear directions. However, they were often able to beat Yoland's men into a sorry state, severely injuring or killing those who had wanted to take advantage of the situation to launch a sneak attack in the dark. "I didn't see anyone release the Sky's Eye. I don't know how the enemy can grasp our movements so clearly." The Wind Mage appeared to be extremely anxious and frantic as he quickly said in a panicked voice, "Everyone, if you think that you can easily escape after committing a crime in the Lancelot Empire, I think you are gravely mistaken. Heh, we all know who you are. As long as you put down your weapons, surrender, and reveal your identities to us, we can spare your lives and wait for the negotiators of your empire to come." Han Shou gave out a series of orders and spoke with a smile. Through the observation of the Yin demons, Han Shou had a clear grasp of their movements. Then, he had arranged reasonable experts to intercept them according to their strength. He had successfully killed more than 20 assassins, and only 13 were left. Due to Han Shou's reasonable commands, the Northern Guard only had 4 lightly injured and 1 heavily injured from the enemy's counterattack. Other than that, no one had died. However, what responded to Han Shou was an even more fearless charge. Not a single one of these Angela Empire assassins showed the slightest hesitation. After Han Shou's words, they fiercely tried to charge out of the encirclement. From their reactions and strength, Han Shou could deduce that they were all death-sworn. They had probably never thought of living since they entered the Lancelot Empire. It was basically unrealistic to capture these kinds of people alive. Therefore, after hesitating for a moment, Han Shou suddenly said, "Everyone, don't hold back. Kill them all. Brothers, do your best to charge out. Even if you can't, at least drag a few down with you. Yoland suddenly shouted when he heard Han Shuo's merciless command. You have no chance. Emily's voice was cold. Her eyes under the black robe stared at Yoland and said, There were more than 10 technicians in the factory. They were all powerless civilians. They were all brutally killed. You all deserve to die today. Haha, you're not from our empire. If you die, then so be it. Yoland laughed wildly. He raised his double-edged broadsword and charged straight at Emily while riding on the tattoo beast he was riding. He laughed wildly and said, Woman, do you dare to stop me alone? You're courting death. Before Emily could chant an incantation, Han Shuo arrived at lightning speed. A thick killing intent spread out in an instant. The demon's lair edge radiated red light in all directions. The blood-red sword aura swallowed and spat. Han Shuo gripped the demon's lair edge and slashed it down at Yoland from above. Yoland, who'd been charging towards Emily, hadn't thought that Han Shuo would fly over and attack from above. Although he had the strength of a sky knight, it was still a bit strenuous for him to face such a sudden attack. He'd been holding his broadsword horizontally, but now he hurriedly raised it to meet the demon's lair edge above his head. Clang! Sparks flew in all directions, and an obvious crack appeared on Yoland's broadsword. His shoulder trembled, and he groaned. The violent pattern beast beneath him couldn't withstand the gravity, and its 4 short legs broke with a creak sound. The violent pattern beast fell to the ground, and its wolf-like head continuously spat out blood. Haha, even if you kill me, don't even think about getting the blueprints. All the technicians have been killed. Without the blueprints, you still won't be able to make the chariot. Yoland first looked at the tattoo beast beneath him with grief, then laughed wildly with a malevolent expression. He had no way to attack Han Shuo, who was standing proudly in the air, and could only quickly run towards Emily. Isn't it just hiding in a crack in the wall? How hard can it be to find? Han Shuo said disdainfully. When Yoland's face changed greatly, Han Shuo didn't bother with Yoland and rushed towards the room they'd been hiding in like lightning. Chapter 284. Yoland, who had planned to attack Emily, felt his heart skip a beat when he heard that Han Shuo had revealed his secret. Just as he was about to turn around and return to the room to destroy the blueprint, a few crossbow bolts whizzed towards Yoland. Emily waved the magic staff in her hand, and a sharp Grim Reaper scythe, shining with the light of death, slashed towards Yoland's body. Stop him! Don't let him get the blueprint! Yoland's sharp voice rang out as he hurriedly raised his broadsword and slammed it towards the Grim Reaper scythe. The Angela Empire assassins who had been trying to break out of the encirclement all gave up on trying to break out of the encirclement when they heard Yoland's shout. They all turned around and charged towards Han Shuo. Unfortunately, the difference in strength between them and Han Shuo was too great. Their speed was also incomparable. Han Shuo used the art of the demonic ninth heavens to fly to the room like a bolt of lightning. He took out the blueprint from the hollowed-out corner of the wall, and only then did the assassins run in front of him. Courting death! Han Shuo shouted coldly. He lifted the demon's lair edge and landed on the ground, walking towards the Angela Empire assassins who were charging towards him in a frenzy. As the mystical glacial spell fire was unleashed, Han Shuo's demon's lair edge burst out with a brilliant purple and red light. The purple and red light sparkled like a rainbow on the blade of the demon's lair edge, quickly forming thin and long flames. The purple and red flames flickered beautifully, jumping out of the demon's lair edge's blade and stretching into twisted lines of fire, entangling into 2 magic webs, one purple and one red. The few assassins from the Angela Empire who were charging towards Han Shuo only had one thought in their minds: to destroy Han Shuo. Facing the magic webs of the scorching and freezing elements, each of them unleashed their strongest fighting chi to form swords, attempting to tear the 2 webs apart. However, Han Shuo's strength had greatly improved, and his mastery of the mystical glacial spell fire had reached a whole new level. The leaping magic webs twisted and swayed in the air, as if they were fishing in the ocean. The sword light pierced the magic webs, but they simply hit nothing but air, piercing through the beautiful lines of fire. Not good, retreat quickly! Yoland, who had dodged the death god's scythe in the distance, charged towards Han Shuo as well. When he saw that his subordinate's sword rays were ineffective against the weave, he immediately understood that this unknown web was not something that could be torn apart by sword rays. Thus, he could not help but shout a warning. However, the strange swaying webs in the air were extremely fast. Before those people could react, 2 large webs had already been cast down and trapped them all. The crimson net enveloped the 3 assassins. The bodies of the 3 assassins that were touched by the line of fire felt as if they were pressed down by a red-hot iron brand. Thick smoke suddenly rose from their bodies. Amidst the shrill screams, their flesh was charred black, and they slowly fell to the ground. The other 4 assassins who were covered by the purple weave immediately froze up, their bodies shivering like ice sculptures as they maintained their positions of either dodging or attacking. "I'll die with you!" Yoland finally arrived in front of Han Shuo. When he saw his brothers turn into charred ice sculptures under the cover of the weave, he roared and raised his broadsword, charging towards Han Shuo without a care for his own safety. "Heh heh! I'm afraid you won't have the chance." Han Shuo raised the demon's lair edge, a calm smile on his face as he said these words and flew towards Yoland. Yoland had a sinister expression on his face as he brandished his great sword. He laughed wildly when he saw Han Shuo rapidly approaching, and was about to throw caution to the wind and fight to the death with Han Shuo when a pair of hands suddenly reached out from the ground beneath his feet and tightly grabbed onto his feet. "Shoot him to death!" Han Shuo, who had been close to Yoland, suddenly froze in midair as he shouted at the dozen or so Northern Army knights with crossbows in their hands. Yoland, who was unable to move, could only watch as Han Shuo stood 5 meters in front of him in the air. When he raised his broadsword and chopped down at the 2 large hands that were grabbing onto his legs, the 2 large hands retracted into the ground. He then felt an unforgettable pain from the bottom of his feet. 2 bone spikes had pierced deep into his feet, sinking deep into his knees. Amidst the screams of a pig being slaughtered, several crossbow bolts flew over and pierced through Yoland's body. Yoland's resentment and killing intent before his death transformed into an aura that was difficult to see with the naked eye and was absorbed by Han Shuo, who stood calmly in front of him. Including Yoland, the group of 20 or so assassins from the Angela Empire had all lost their lives. None of the resentment and killing intent of the dead escaped Han Shuo's absorption. Instead, it made Han Shuo's magical yuan even more complete, and the feeling that he was about to break through became stronger and stronger. Han Shuo walked in front of the 4 Angela assassins who were like ice sculptures and shot out 4 beams of black light that landed on the 4 assassins. 4 crunching sounds rang out one after another, and the originally frozen assassins fell limply to the ground. Han Shuo said to the knight leader of the Northern Army, "These 4 aren't dead yet. Guard them closely and don't let them commit suicide. This will be an explanation to His Majesty." "Don't worry, Sir Brian, we know what to do." The leader readily agreed and ordered the few soldiers behind him. "You guys tie up these 4 assassins and cover their mouths with cloth. Don't let them have the chance to bite their tongues and commit suicide." Under the leader's orders, the dozen or so soldiers quickly came over and took out special tools to tie people up from their leather bags. From their well-practiced movements and rich equipment, Han Shuo was sure that these 4 assassins would have a hard time even if they wanted to commit suicide. Once they were brought to the Northern Army's detention center and given an anesthetic, they would be so weak that they wouldn't even have the strength to bite their tongues. Under torture, they might actually be able to get some information out of them. Without looking at the 4 assassins, Han Shuo walked to Emily's side and handed the blueprint to Emily. "Take it. This mission is considered complete. It doesn't matter if I give the blueprint to the Northern Army. If you take the blueprint, the Northern Army will be able to answer to His Majesty." Emily and Han Shuo naturally wouldn't stand on ceremony. Since Emily couldn't reveal her identity, she didn't say anything to Han Shuo. She nodded and turned around, landing on the carriage that Chester was driving. She entered the carriage and left with Chester, quickly disappearing. Sir Brian, it's all thanks to you that we were able to successfully capture the assassins from the Angela Empire and find their hidden blueprint. If Count Boris puts in a few good words for you in front of His Majesty, Sir Brian's contribution will be enough for you to be made a noble. Thunder Archmage Korea walked in front of Han Shu and sincerely congratulated him. He appeared to be even happier than Han Shu. Heh, the credit belongs to everyone. Without everyone's cooperation, I wouldn't have been able to capture them by myself. You guys go back and report. I still have some matters to attend to, so I'll be leaving for a while. Han Shu glanced at Korea and said with a smile. All right, Sir Brian, please leave first. We'll take care of the aftermath, Korea said with a respectful expression. Nodding, Han Shu didn't continue to stay here. He left in another direction and quickly disappeared from the dirty and chaotic slums of the western part of the city. In the dead of night, Han Shu silently appeared in the Buzz Merchant Guild and walked towards Phoebe's room with great familiarity. There's no need to think about it. I believe that Brian will definitely win. Perhaps our guild's crisis can be turned around with this gamble. Take out all the funds we can and fiercely fight against Cameron and the others. In Phoebe's living room, the capable and astute Phoebe said resolutely. Little Phoebe, do you want to reconsider this matter? I know your relationship with Brian. Although his strength isn't bad, Leah Kane has been famous for many years and is even stronger. Everyone agrees that Leah Kane has a higher chance of winning. This gamble is no small matter. If we lose, I'm afraid that the Buzz Merchant Guild will directly collapse. Buzz Merchant Guild's elder, Andrew said with some worry as he leaned on his walking stick. Andrew was an elder of the Buzz Merchant Guild. Before Phoebe had taken control, he had taken care of Phoebe. Therefore, Phoebe still cared a lot about Andrew's opinion. However, after becoming the master of the Buzz Merchant Guild, Phoebe had truly taken control of the guild. During this period of time, the Buzz Merchant Guild had indeed made great progress in Phoebe's hands. Andrew had also seen this and understood that Phoebe wasn't an emotional person. If it wasn't for Leah Kane's fame, perhaps he wouldn't be so worried. Grandpa Andrew, Brian's strength is even more powerful than you can imagine. In addition, we've already been forced into such a state by Cameron. Right now, Cameron's Merchant Guild is doing everything they can to suppress us. Our guild is having a hard time moving forward. Even without this competition, our Buzz Merchant Guild will still be slowly weakened by their bullying. But if we win this time, then we can reverse the situation. Those merchant guilds that originally cooperated with Cameron will shed all pretenses of cordiality because of the huge losses. At that time, we, who have a large amount of capital, will be able to truly control the situation. Phoebe calmly analyzed and explained to Andrew. AI, since you've said so, then let's do it. I hope that Brian won't disappoint us, otherwise the Buzz Merchant Guild will really be finished. Andrew thought for a while and finally nodded in agreement with Phoebe's suggestion. This also meant that the crisis that the Buzz Merchant Guild was facing was extremely great. Otherwise, they wouldn't have taken this kind of gamble to save the guild. Chapter 285. After Andrew's group left, Phoebe sat there with a frown on her face, deep in thought. It seemed that the Buzz Merchant Guild was facing a great crisis this time. Otherwise, with Phoebe's cautious nature, she probably wouldn't have used this kind of gambling method to fight. Han Shu slowly walked in without a sound and looked at Phoebe with bright eyes when he arrived at the door. After a while, Phoebe was suddenly startled. She raised her head and saw that the person was Han Shu. She revealed a serene smile and happily said, "You're back? Don't worry, I will kill Leah Kane with my sword tomorrow. There's no doubt about that." Han Shu smiled as he walked towards Phoebe. When he was in front of Phoebe, he reached out and smoothed out the worry lines between Phoebe's eyebrows. He said softly, "I believe you. This time, our Buzz Merchant Guild has put out 700,000 gold coins. As long as you kill Leah Kane, Cameron will have to compensate us 5 times the amount according to the current odds. No matter how rich Cameron is, he won't be able to support it. This way, our Buzz Merchant Guild will have an enormous amount of capital. Cameron and the others will naturally not be in danger. Phoebe enjoyed Han Shuo's gentleness very much. She lightly leaned on Han Shuo's chest and said softly, "All right, you should rest early. I'll cultivate here tonight. Tomorrow, I'll go to the garden house to challenge Leah Kane and get rid of this trouble as soon as possible." Han Shuo patted Phoebe's fragrant shoulder and urged Phoebe. After hearing Han Shuo's words, Phoebe nodded meekly and smiled. "Don't worry, I'll definitely go with you tomorrow and watch you kill Leah Kane with my own eyes. I know you'll definitely win." After saying this, Phoebe didn't stay here any longer. She walked into the room with a light smile and said softly, "Wait until you win, then accompany me for a good chat." After Phoebe left, Han Shuo sat down cross-legged in the hall and silently circulated his magical yuan. He slowly recovered his spirit and adjusted his condition. Inside Han Shuo's body, the demon infant seemed to be in a bloody whirlpool. Drops of blood essence were sparkling and translucent like rubies, appearing like red crystals. The blood essence converged into a whirlpool, nourishing the demon infant in the center. Streaks of crimson blood energy surrounded it. This was the killing intent of the bloodlust realm. It was also a kind of nourishment for the demon infant. The demon infant that looked exactly like Han Shuo was only the size of a fist, but there was a black dot between its eyebrows. This was where Han Shuo's life weapon, the Demon's Lair Edge, resided. The Demon's Lair Edge that was connected to Han Shuo's life had absorbed a large amount of killing intent during this period of time. It had hidden itself in Han Shuo's body and became a black dot between the demon infant's eyebrows. Through this method, the connection between Han Shuo and the Demon's Lair Edge became more complete. The demon infant and the Demon's Lair Edge could also replenish and absorb energy from each other. Once the Demon's Lair Edge successfully evolved into a vile soul, the connection between the Demon's Lair Edge and the Demon's Lair Edge would become even closer. As long as Han Shuo willed it, it wouldn't be impossible for him to take someone's head from 1,000 miles away. During this period of time, the bloodlust realm Han Shuo had fought all over the place and killed many experts. The killing intent and resentment of the experts that died in Han Shuo's hands were all absorbed by Han Shuo, aiding Han Shuo's progress bit by bit. Especially during the trip to the Forbidden Land, where Han Shuo had devoured a large amount of killing intent, both Han Shuo and the Demon's Lair Edge had made great progress. In the bloodlust realm, Han Shuo could already gradually control his nature. When the killing intent accumulated to a certain degree, it would change from quantitative to qualitative. At that time, he would be able to break through to the separate demon realm, and his strength would increase by another step. At that time, not only could he continue to cultivate a higher level of secret demonic arts, but he could also separate his consciousness from his body and obtain some unfathomable abilities. After a night of meditation, Han Shuo was in high spirits the next day. He left the Buzz Merchant Guild with Phoebe and headed to the garden house where Leah Kane lived. During these days, the news that Han Shuo was about to challenge the mad great sword master Leah Kane of the Brute Merchant Alliance had been deliberately exaggerated by Candide and Lawrence. Many spies of the nobles appeared in the vicinity of the garden house. There were also a few experts from all sides who were full of interest, waiting for Han Shuo's arrival. When Han Shuo alighted from Phoebe's carriage and walked alone to the garden house, he was recognized by someone. Amidst the whispers, the spies from all sides quickly returned to report the news. For a moment, the whispers turned into a hubbub. More and more people came to the garden house after hearing the news. As the mad great sword master of the Brute Merchant Alliance, Leah Kane was very famous in the circles of many nobles and experts. As soon as such a character appeared in Asan City, he successfully defeated 3 of the city's great sword masters and made a name for himself. Unfortunately, Leah Kane was an outsider after all. The citizens of the Lancelot Empire naturally didn't like this. During this time, Han Shuo's fame had also risen greatly. Of course, Han Shuo's reputation wasn't good either. Since he had killed several opponents in a row, Han Shuo's notoriety had spread far and wide. However, Although Han Shuo's reputation wasn't good, he was still a citizen of the Lancelot Empire. Therefore, everyone hoped that he would win. Along the way to the garden house, the nobles and commoners in the surroundings all cheered to send him off. These people had long known that such a day would come. Due to Lawrence's information, they knew that Han Shuo would definitely come within the next 2 days. Since they had nothing better to do, they came to try their luck. They didn't expect that Han Shuo would really come today. The spectators were all in high spirits. Han Shuo, who was 1.9 meters tall, wore a simple and capable black warrior's attire. His appearance was masculine and handsome. Because he had been practicing demonic arts for a long time, he naturally had an eye-catching demonic temperament. Some of the noble ladies who saw Han Shuo for the first time had a favorable impression of him as soon as they saw his appearance, regardless of whether they were right or wrong. Each and every one of them looked at Han Shuo with burning gazes. At first, they whispered to each other, but later, they even started screaming. "Humph, I'm so angry. He left for so many days, and this time he stood me up again. If I didn't know about this matter, who knows when I would be able to see him again?" On a street in front of the garden house, Fanny was leading a group of people from the necromancy major of the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force. She stared at Han Shuo from afar and complained in a low voice. "Master Fanny, what are you saying? Look, that really is Brian. I thought it was fake when I first heard the news. I didn't think that it would really be Brian. He actually went to challenge that evil person, Leah Kane. Just thinking about it makes me excited." Amy of the necromancy major waved her little fist excitedly as she watched Han Shuo walk towards the garden house. She shouted at Fanny beside her. "No, nothing." Fanny covered it up with a smile. She then said, "I didn't think that this guy wouldn't be nervous at all in front of so many people. It looks like he's really grown up. Brian is really amazing. His deeds have spread all over Asen City. Even our necromancy major has many new students. These new students actually chose our weak necromancy major as soon as they entered the academy. What a reversal of fortune!" Athena was also a bit excited. She sighed emotionally as she watched Han Shuo proudly walk forward. This time, Lisa had also come along. However, Lisa was much quieter than before. She didn't chatter incessantly, but only silently gazed at the dazzling Han Shuo in the distance. Looking at Han Shuo, who was still calm and unruffled in the face of so many gazes, Lisa suddenly felt that he was supposed to be this dazzling. "I'm Brian. I've come to see Mr. Leah Kane," Han Shuo said with a smile to the guard in front of the garden house's main entrance. A large number of nobles and commoners had come to watch from the alleys and pavilions around the garden house. The news that Han Shuo wanted to challenge Leah Kane had been released a long time ago. Leah Kane had also given the order, so the guard naturally knew what to do. "Mr. Leah Kane is currently cultivating. He already knew that you would come and told us to invite you in as soon as you arrived," the guard said respectfully. "That's good. Please lead the way," Han Shuo said with a smile. Under the guard's guidance, Han Shuo walked into the garden house with him. The onlookers outside were all stopped. The garden house was a private property after all. Without the owner's permission, no one could enter without permission. "Let us in, let us in! Yes, we've been waiting for a long time. Please let us in. I'm Count ACI of the Lancelot Empire. I want to see Mr. Leah Kane." After Han Shuo entered, some of the commoners and nobles surrounding the garden house tried to use various methods to enter. Not far away, a few carriages slowly approached. These carriages were beautifully decorated. One look and anyone could tell that they were nobles. A group of nobles led by eldest Prince Charles, Old Han and Emily of the Betteridge family, ministers of finance Evie and Lawrence, Boris of the Northern Guard, and other nobles also slowly made their way over. Candide and one of the 3 heavyweights, Amis, appeared on top of the tallest building across from the garden house. They were also watching the garden house across from them. Chapter 286. That kid, is he the Brian you were talking about? Ames, one of the three heavyweights of the Dark Mantle, looked at Han Sho from the garden house with interest and spoke elegantly. That's him. He has indeed done many great things recently, and his strength seems to be unfathomable. It's just that I haven't truly seen him yet. This is a good opportunity to see his true strength, Candide said to Ames with a gloomy face. Ames looked to be in his 30s and was wearing a well-tailored white robe. There were no decorations on the robe, making it look clean and simple. It complemented his extraordinary handsome appearance, and gave him an attractive and refined charm. However, for the nobles of the Lancelot Empire, the handsome and elegant Ames, who often wore a faint smile, was a terrifying character like the god of death. Once a noble was targeted by Ames, there was basically no possibility of escape. The lightest punishment was confiscation of their property and imprisonment, while the heaviest punishment was immediate execution. Among the three heavyweights, Cecilia was usually active abroad, Candide was in charge of gathering intelligence and investigating assassins of the Empire, and Ames was in charge of monitoring and suppressing high officials and nobles. The three of them had a clear division of labor and coordinated very well. However, Candide and Cecilia usually didn't show themselves in front of the public and posed no threat to some of the nobles of the Empire. Only Ames was the most familiar, and also the most feared. There wasn't a single noble who wasn't afraid of him. You should be very clear about Liacane's strength. In addition, Liacane is related to First Prince Charles. If this kid can't beat Liacane, I'm afraid it will be difficult for him to leave the garden house alive. Ames narrowed his slender eyes and looked at Han Sho, who was standing proudly in the garden house as he spoke to Candide. That's hard to say. Ferguson, who is a light grand magus like you, also died in his hands. As far as I know, Ferguson's fame isn't any lower than Liacane's. If he can kill a light grand magus, then he might be able to kill Liacane as well. Although Candide wasn't optimistic about Han Sho had been promoted by him. Candide couldn't lose face in front of Ames. Ames smiled elegantly and didn't say much. He only nodded slightly and leisurely sat down on a stone bench on the high platform. He took out an exquisite tea set and began to drink by himself. Inside the garden house, Han Sho was a bit worried. Through the three demons spying, Han Sho discovered that Emily, Phoebe, and Fanny were all outside the garden house. Although the three women weren't in the same direction, Han Sho knew that they would definitely come looking for him once he left the garden house. Han Sho wasn't worried about Emily because she was open-minded when it came to relationships. Although she might have some grudges in her heart, at least she wouldn't fly into a rage. However, Phoebe and Fanny didn't know about Han Sho's situation. Once the two women saw each other, a storm would be inevitable. While Han Sho was still worrying about relationships, mad great swordsman Liacane walked out from the center of the garden house. Liacane carried a broadsword and walked out with a cold expression. His cruel eyes swept over Han Sho and he snorted. Brat, you're that Brian, right? That's me. I think you already know about the situation, so there's no need for us to talk nonsense. Let's fight on this spacious lawn and settle this storm, shall we? As soon as Liacane walked out of the room, Han Sho immediately cast aside his emotional worries and focused all of his attention on Liacane, replying leisurely. All right, I'll teach you a good lesson. Liacane laughed sinisterly, and then looked at the crowd outside the garden house. He suddenly said, If you don't mind, can you let the people outside come in and watch the fight? Frowning, Han Sho thought for a moment and said, I don't mind. It's just that there are too many people outside. If they all come in, I'm afraid it won't be appropriate. Then, there shouldn't be a problem if only the nobles are allowed in. Liacane had listened to Charles's instructions beforehand. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made this suggestion. Han Sho was worried that if the three women gathered together and got too close to him, there would be a disturbance that he didn't want to see. That was why he was a bit apprehensive. When Liacane said this, Han Sho remembered that Fanny and Phoebe didn't have noble titles. He nodded and said, Then do as you wish. Seeing Han Sho nod in agreement, Liacane waved his hand at the guard in the distance. The guards seemed to have known Leah Kane's intentions and shouted from outside. Those with noble titles in the Lancelot Empire can come in and watch. Other commoners are not allowed inside. With this, the nobles who were loitering outside walked in arrogantly and gracefully. The commoners around them didn't say anything. On the profound continent, the nobles had certain privileges. Commoners were well aware of this, and had long since gotten used to it. Therefore, they weren't surprised. One by one, the nobles entered the garden house with their attendants. Among them, Phoebe and Lawrence mixed together and also took the opportunity to enter the garden house. As soon as Phoebe entered the garden house, she suddenly felt someone spying on her. She turned her head and saw that it was an astonished Emily. Emily was wearing a long purple dress. Her delicate face was as white as jade. She was incomparably beautiful among old Han's group. She carried an awe-inspiring and inviolable nobility. She didn't have any of the melancholy that a widow should have. She was unbelievably dazzling. Damn that Brian! This Emily must have also obtained a miraculous pill. Could he be related to Emily? With just a glance, Phoebe knew that it was the effect of the rebirth pill. Especially when Emily looked at Phoebe with a gaze full of astonishment. The two women immediately understood what was going on with just a glance. Hey! Brian, you'll definitely win. Lawrence was very optimistic as he cheered for Han Shaw from afar. Humph, he wants to win with his abilities? Dream on. First Prince Charles said disdainfully from not too far away from Lawrence. The group of nobles following behind him immediately chimed in and started sucking up to the prince. Each and every one of them did their utmost to recite the reasons why Han Shaw would surely lose, wanting to win Charles's favor. There was a lawn the size of a football field in the center of the garden house. Han Shaw and Leah Kane were currently at the center of the lawn, surrounded by nobles of the Lancelot Empire. These nobles all had expert guards beside them. In addition, they were quite a distance away from Han Shaw and Leah Kane, so they weren't worried about their own safety. The grave and stern Leah Kane didn't pay too much attention to Han Shaw. When he saw the nobles enter one after another, he cast his gaze at Charles. Charles, who was chatting cheerfully and wittily, saw Leah Kane look at him. He nodded slightly, indicating that Leah Kane could make his move. Leah Kane, who was carrying a broadsword, finally turned his gaze back to Han Shaw. He said coldly, "Brat, are you ready to die?" Han Shaw took a deep breath and expelled all distracting thoughts from his mind. Han Shaw's face instantly became cold and merciless. His voice was also cold and arrogant. "Mr. Leah Kane, before the battle, I have to remind you that apart from martial arts, I'm also an archmage necromancer. I hope you'll be careful." "Humph, you're just a useless archmage necromancer. You're wasting your energy on this kind of useless magic. I can already imagine how high your attainments in martial arts are. I really don't know what kind of trash that great sword master you killed was. He couldn't even win against a guy like you who didn't focus on martial arts. It seems that your Lancelot Empire really doesn't have any true experts." Leah Kane was incomparably arrogant. He had offended all the surrounding nobles with just this one sentence. Even the nobles who had bet on him to win all revealed angry expressions. "Idiot, even if you win, don't even think about establishing a foothold in the Lancelot Empire. No wonder you wanted to escape from the brute merchant alliance. With this kind of temper, if you didn't have some strength, you would have been killed long ago." First Prince Charles looked at the arrogant Leah Kane and cursed in his heart. He had already made up his mind that even if Leah Kane killed Han Shaw this time, he absolutely couldn't expose his relationship with Leah Kane. This was to avoid affecting the noble's opinion of him because of Leah Kane. "Mr. Leah Kane, I hope you won't disappoint me." With a thought, the demon's lair edge fell into Han Shaw's right hand from his sleeve. The 2-foot-long demon's lair edge was as sharp as a needle. The blade was an abnormal dark brown color. It didn't look very conspicuous without magical yuan. "Kid, since you dared to come to my place, you should have already made preparations. Today, I'll let you know the strength of your seniors. Don't think that you're invincible just because you've won against a few pieces of trash." Liu Kang snorted coldly and pointed the broadsword in his hand at Han Shuo, speaking arrogantly. Han Shuo didn't respond to Liu Kang. With a callous expression, he raised the demon's lair edge and directly flew towards Liu Kang. His body drew several afterimages due to his high speed. He was so fast that it was hard to tell which was which. Chapter 287. Although Liu Kang's words were disdainful, when Han Shuo actually made his move, he immediately focused all of his attention to deal with it. He raised the broadsword in his hand and snorted coldly. A silver sword curtain suddenly opened in front of him. Liu Kang had already advanced to the realm of Great Sword Master many years ago. He had immersed himself in this realm for a long time, challenging many experts in the Brute Merchant Alliance, and earning the title of Mad Great Sword Master. If he hadn't offended the lightning sacred Magus Reynold Dyla of the Brute Merchant Alliance, Liu Kang wouldn't have come to the Lancelot Empire. Great Sword Master Liu Kang opened the silver sword curtain and completely enveloped the area in front of him. Han Shuo, who was flying over, could feel the enormous sword aura contained within the sword curtain. The invincible demon's lair edge in his hand shot out a black light after injecting demonic yuan into it, directly piercing towards the silver sword curtain. When the demon's lair edge shot out this attack, the black light that burst out was dark and gloomy. It carried an astonishing killing intent as it suddenly bombarded the sword screen that Liu Kang had created. Only a few explosive sounds could be heard as the silver sword screen and the black light intertwined. The silver light and black light scattered like specks of starlight. "Oh!" Liu Kang exclaimed softly and abruptly took a step back. He looked at Han Shuo in astonishment and said, "Good kid, your martial technique is indeed a bit strange. It's actually not fighting aura." The silver sword curtain disappeared into thin air under the black light of the demon's lair edge. However, when the silver sword curtain and the demon's lair edge collided, an enormous force flowed through the demon's lair edge and directly into Han Shuo's arm. Han Shuo's arm was shaken to the point of numbness. Han Shuo didn't rush to attack again. He coldly stared at Liu Kang, not daring to relax at all. After this attack, Han Shuo already knew that Liu Kang was indeed much stronger than the Great Sword Master he had killed last time. They were both Great Sword Masters, but Liu Kang had immersed himself in this realm for many years. His attainments were indeed extraordinary. "This Brian does have some strength." On the balcony opposite the garden house, Amis looked at Candide in astonishment, and exclaimed softly. Candide's eyes sparkled as he looked at Brian with great interest. He replied, "This is also the first time I've seen him fight. He didn't have any fighting aura, but he was actually able to break through Liu Kang's sword curtain condensed from fighting aura. This is indeed strange. It looks like he's hiding a lot of secrets." The nobles around the lawn cried out in surprise when they saw Han Shuo cut through Liu Kang's sword curtain with a single stroke. Lawrence, Phoebe, and the others revealed joyful expressions. "This kid isn't bad. He saved us last time at Evie's house, so we owe him a favor. I hope he won't be harmed by Liu Kang." Old Han, who was beside Emily, chuckled as he looked at Han Shuo and spoke to Emily. "Father, I think this Brian might be able to win," Emily said with a light smile. She understood that Han Shuo's strength wasn't just limited to this. Just Han Shuo's ability to fly was already a great advantage. This wasn't something Liu Kang could do. "Haha, I hope so." Old Han laughed heartily. Liu Kang snorted coldly amidst the clamor of the crowd. "You do have some strength, but it's a pity that you shouldn't have challenged me." As soon as he finished speaking, Liu Kang raised his broadsword and walked towards Han Shuo. His speed wasn't fast, and every step he took was very heavy. The two crisscrossing scars on his neck looked very sinister, and his eyes were filled with a crazy desire to fight. Liu Kang walked over step by step, his aura becoming stronger and stronger. The broadsword in his hand shone with a brilliant silver light, emitting a dazzling radiance under the sunlight. The silver fighting aura and the broadsword fused together and converged into a gorgeous rainbow. It slashed down towards Han Shuo from a distance of 10 meters. This silver rainbow was incomparably fast, as if it had crossed 10 meters. It appeared in front of Han Shuo in an instant. The enormous power contained within it was so strong that even some of the spectating nobles could clearly feel it. Han Shuo stood there like a fool. He didn't seem to be able to react for a moment under the attack of the silver rainbow. The crowd watched helplessly as Han Shuo was slashed down by the silver rainbow. He didn't seem to know how to dodge at all. Hurry and run! Many of the spectators who were worried about Han Shuo all screamed out to warn him. Unfortunately, the speed of their voices was obviously slower than Liu Kang's silver rainbow. As soon as these people's warnings came out, a terrifying explosion came from the area where Han Shuo had been standing. The area where Han Shuo had been standing had directly split open into a 15-meter-long ravine. The ravine was so deep that it looked like it had been cut into a piece of tofu. Silver fighting aura lingered in the ravine and didn't dissipate. The enormous power continued to explode on both sides of the huge ravine, producing rumbling sounds. When the terrifying explosion stopped, the ravine that had been split open became even bigger. All the weeds were covered by the silver fighting aura and turned into green sawdust. What a terrifying attack! Per Challenger, he's definitely done for. Sigh, he's still a bit young after all. It's inevitable that he can't withstand a single blow from such an expert who's been famous for so many years. Let's go. That young man must have died in the ravine. There's nothing left to see. Oh, such a handsome man was actually killed by that ugly monster. Damn enemy nation's people. All sorts of unfavorable comments about Han Shuo came from the mouths of the spectators. They watched as Han Shuo didn't make any movements to dodge Liu Kang's sword. They naturally assumed that Han Shuo had already died in the ravine. Suddenly, a loud shout sounded. "Oh my God! Look up in the sky!" As soon as these words were spoken, everyone raised their heads in unison. They saw Han Shuo proudly standing high in the sky with the Demon's Lair edge in hand, coldly looking down at Liu Kang. He wasn't injured at all. How is this possible? Even Liu Kang himself couldn't help but cry out in surprise. He stared at the sky with some disbelief. If a swordsman wanted to stand in the sky, they had to reach the realm of Sword God in order to rely on fighting aura to travel in the sky. Although mages could use the levitation spell to stand in the air at the Archmage realm, the levitation spell still couldn't be that fast, nor could it be that nimble. Although Han Shuo was an Archmage necromancer, he couldn't use the slow levitation spell to dodge the swift and violent sword attack. Therefore, Liu Kang couldn't help but be shocked when he saw Han Shuo standing unscathed in the sky. Amis, can you sense the gathering of magical elements on his body? Why can't I sense it at all? Candide, who was on the high platform, looked at Han Shuo who was standing proudly in the sky and shouted in amazement. Shaking his head, the usually calm and collected Amis also cried out in surprise. Strange, very strange. He's not using any magical fighting aura, but he's actually able to stand so miraculously in the sky. What's going on? It looks like it must have something to do with the miraculous martial arts technique he practices. Amis, Brian's martial arts technique is very miraculous. If the Lancelot Empire's military can master it, and use it to fly at high speeds, the strength of our Lancelot Empire's army will increase many times over. Candide's heart was moved as he immediately shouted. Be careful. If Liu Kang dares to kill, we must stop him even if it means breaking the rules. This Brian is indeed miraculous. He's too useful to our Lancelot Empire. We absolutely cannot let him die. Amis shouted resolutely. He had already decided to protect Han Shuo at all costs. Let's do it. After this matter, I believe that your Majesty will know what to do. Candide immediately agreed. His sinister eyes focused on Liu Kang's body. The dark element around his body intensified as he prepared to make a move at any time, regardless of his status. Amidst the lush foliage of a towering tree, the super assassin Balans that Han Shuo and Lawrence had previously met in the Northern Rose Garden was crouching amidst the leaves and gazing at the sky. His eyes were wide open as he muttered to himself. This is too miraculous. He's actually using a martial arts technique to stand proudly in the sky. This Brian seems to be hiding other secrets besides his extraordinary attainments in killing aura. Master really made the right choice to let me come this time. Kid, don't think that you're so great just because you're a mage. Come down if you have the guts. Lia Kane bellowed as he looked up at Han Shu in the sky. Although he was a great sword master, he still couldn't fly in the sky. Facing Han Shu, he could only stare at him helplessly. As you wish. Han Shu let out a long laugh in the sky and flew down like a meteor. The demon's lair edge in his hand shot out a 2-meter-long purplish-red demonic light. A thick murderous aura spread in all directions with Han Shu as the center. All the onlookers felt their hearts palpitate and couldn't help but step back a bit. Each and every one of them looked at the descending Han Shu with shock. Chapter 288. Good kid! Lia Kane clearly felt this enormous killing intent. His crazed eyes were filled with battle excitement as silver fighting aura continuously condensed on the broadsword in his hand. He didn't wait for Han Shu to land on the ground before another silver rainbow shot out, aiming straight for Han Shu, who was slashing at his head. Han Shu's eyes turned scarlet red as killing intent gathered around his body. His expression was sinister and terrifying, and a sinister, mysterious, and terrifying aura shrouded Lia Kane's head along with the bloody mist. The 2-meter-long purplish-red demonic light drifted downwards in a bewitching manner like a beautiful large feather drifting in the wind. A loud clang sounded as the purplish-red demonic light descended and intertwined with Lia Kane's silver rainbow. It was as if there were beautiful fireworks exploding in the air. Silver, deep red, and purple lights continuously shot out. Waves of metallic clashing sounds continuously came from the beautiful explosions. Lia Kane, who was standing on the ground, had already been smashed into the grass by the enormous force as the explosions continued to ring in his ears. The soil had sunk up to his knees, and a strange power of alternating heat and cold suddenly enveloped him. The strange power was like an all-pervasive ghost that poured straight into his body. Lia Kane suddenly shivered as he felt his body turn stiff and cold. Just as he was feeling aghast, another wave of scorching heat erupted from his body like a volcano. The two auras of cold and heat intertwined within his body, giving Lia Kane an incomparably wonderful and painful feeling. Ah! Lia Kane let out a crazed howl and screamed at the sky like a madman. He tore off the clothes on the upper half of his body, revealing a body of strong muscles. Streaks of silver light were clearly twisting on his naked body, and there were even streaks of red and purple light reflecting off of them. It was a very strange sight. "I'm going to tear you apart!" Lia Kane roared. Specks of silver light gathered on the broadsword in his hand as he brandished it towards the cold attacking Han Shu. Suddenly, the light on the broadsword in Lia Kane's hand abruptly receded. All of the silver fighting aura had disappeared, and the bright and clean broadsword didn't reflect any luster under the sunlight. It looked incomparably strange. Han Shu, who had exchanged a blow with Lia Kane, understood that Lia Kane's strength was indeed extraordinary. Han Shu, who was in the bloodthirsty realm, hadn't been able to gain the upper hand even with his full strength. If it wasn't for the mystical glacial spellfire's two extreme cold and heat attributes, Lia Kane wouldn't have been in such a difficult situation. Han Shu's hands were numb as he flew down. An enormous amount of magical yuan surged into the demon's lair edge. Han Shu, who had been accumulating energy to deal another heavy blow to Elijah Kane, suddenly discovered that the radiance of the broadsword had completely disappeared. He instinctively felt a sense of danger. Han Shu's extraordinary perception once again displayed its keen effect. He was flying down to attack Lia Kane when he immediately connected with the three demons. When the broadsword in Lia Kane's hand trembled, Han Shu's body suddenly split into four and fell in four different directions. At this moment, the broadsword that had completely lost its luster suddenly burst out with a blinding light. Fine, needle-like rays of cold light shot towards the sky like rain. Those needle-like rays of cold light covered an area of 5 meters. Not only were they densely packed, but they were also filled with terrifying penetrative power. They pierced into the sky in the blink of an eye and disappeared. The body formed by the Yin demon took the place of the original body and was completely penetrated by the cold light. The incorporeal and formless Yin demon was also invaded by a strange power when the cold light pierced through the sky. Because the dense fighting aura had been condensed to an extremely small degree, it actually possessed a powerful destructive power against the Yin demon. This caused one of Han Shuo's Yin demons to be pierced full of holes and its aura to become extremely weak. What a terrifying attack! Han Shuo was shocked. He was absolutely horrified when he landed on the ground. Liu Kang was indeed very frightening. He was actually able to condense fighting aura to such a small and dense degree. The fighting aura had been condensed to the size of needles, but the power and destructive power contained within had actually increased by 100 times. Even the almost incorporeal Yin demon was injured by this kind of sharp light. Han Shuo believed that if he hadn't reacted in time and decisively used fulgurating shadows, his physical body would definitely have been destroyed. While Han Shuo was endlessly shocked by Liu Kang, as the attacker, was even more incredulous. He never thought that Han Shuo would be able to dodge his attack. When Han Shuo, who had been split into 4, landed on the ground, the 3 Yin demons' bodies slowly faded, like reflections in water that had a stone thrown into them. They twisted and swayed for a moment before disappearing, leaving only Han Shuo standing behind Liu Kang. Too strong! Wow, what was that just now? A rain of swords, too gorgeous. I didn't think that this ugly guy could have such a beautiful attack. This Brian is the real deal. If my eyes weren't playing tricks on me, I would have seen 4 Brians just now. Oh my god, too amazing! You're not playing tricks on you. I also saw 4 Brians. What kind of martial technique is that? It's too powerful! After a moment of silence, the surroundings suddenly burst into a fierce clamor. All the nobles and their guards who had come to watch the fight started discussing in surprise. Their faces were filled with excitement and astonishment. They were shocked by this unprecedentedly exciting fight. Wow, what's going on? On the high platform, Candide had an expression of disbelief as he looked at Liu Kang and Han Shuo who were standing in the distance. That Liu Kang is really terrifying. According to our Dark Mantle's information, the experts he's fought in recent years have only used a silver rainbow-like sword light to directly defeat his opponents with his superior fighting aura. However, it seems like Liu Kang's true ultimate move should be that fine and dense rain of cold light that he just released. I could feel the terrifying attack power contained within. I didn't think that this Liu Kang, who looks so crude and brainless, would actually be hiding such a sinister and meticulous ultimate move. What a terrifying person! Amis exclaimed. After a pause, Amis excitedly shouted. Candide, however, this Brian of yours is even more amazing. Facing that kind of attack that was almost impossible to dodge, he actually used that miraculous martial technique to split into 4 people and successfully escape. What an amazing kid! Of course, otherwise why would I put in so much effort for him? Candide, who was originally secretly amazed, immediately said in a gloomy and proud voice after hearing Ami's words. The surrounding people were discussing spiritedly and clamoring noises rose and fell. It seemed like the excited spectators wouldn't stop until the 2 of them made their move. After experiencing a fierce battle, Liu Kang and Han Shuo both had a clear understanding of each other's strength. Han Shuo, who was originally full of confidence, began to treat Han Shuo seriously. Liu Kang, who was originally disdainful of Han Shuo, also put away his arrogance and treated Han Shuo as the most terrifying enemy in his life. At this moment, the 2 of them were 15 meters apart, facing each other with equal harshness. Liu Kang once again stood on flat ground, lightly panting as he glared at Han Shuo. The 2 of them just stared at each other without saying a word. After 10 breaths, Han Shuo grinned and said, Liu Kang, you will die today without a doubt. Your attack just now was indeed incomparably powerful, but it's a pity that it requires a certain amount of time to condense and consumes a lot of fighting aura, right? Lia Kane immediately turned pale with fright when he heard these words. It seemed that Han Shuo had clearly pointed out the weakness of that move. At this moment, Han Shuo dashed towards Lia Kane like a bolt of lightning. The Demon's Lair edge was a step ahead of him and bit towards Lia Kane like a spirit snake with its fangs bared. Once Lia Kane's greatsword blocked the Demon's Lair edge, the Demon's Lair edge would change direction and continue attacking him from the other side. Han Shuo didn't attack Lia Kane like the Demon's Lair edge did. Instead, he flew into the sky once again and took out a white bone staff unhurriedly, starting to chant a necromancy incantation. When the canopy of necromancy covered the sun, 2 evil knights led a group of dark creatures onto the lawn, surrounding Lia Kane heavily. 2 evil knights, 5 hate knights, 20 zombies, 70 skeletal warriors, and 2 teams of 30 gargoyles continuously appeared with Han Shuo's incantations. Lia Kane, who was entangled by the Demon's Lair edge, couldn't do anything. He could only watch as the enormous dark creatures drowned him. Lia Kane is finished, Amis said elegantly and smiled at Candide. Let's go, we'll go see His Majesty together. This Brian's value will definitely make His Majesty make the right decision. Hee hee, that kid Lawrence's luck isn't bad. Perhaps we should get closer to him. You're right. Candide nodded in agreement and floated into the sky with Amis, heading towards the palace from the other side. The two hadn't even completely left when Lia Kane's miserable howls rang out continuously and spread throughout the entire garden house. Lia Kane's ankle was grabbed by the Earth Elite zombie hidden in the ground. He was then ambushed by an unremarkable 7-winged little skull and was seriously injured. Afterwards he was trampled to death by 2 evil knights charging towards him. Behind him, more than 100 dark creatures swarmed over and tore Lia Kane to pieces. Chapter 289. Lia Kane's fate was sealed the moment the 100 or so dark creatures appeared. After all, Lia Kane had already used up a lot of fighting aura in his battle with Han Shuo. That subtle cold light attack in particular had consumed a lot of fighting aura. Although Han Shuo, who had the mental strength of a Grand Magus, couldn't release Grand Magus necromancy magic, his enormous mental strength was enough for Han Shuo to summon a large number of dark creatures. Especially among these dark creatures, there were the ridiculously strong Little Skull, Earth Elite Zombie, and Wood Elite Zombie. These 3 strange dark creatures were mixed in with the enormous army of necromancers. Their surprise attacks weren't something an ordinary person could defend against. Lia Kane had to deal with the Demon's Lair Edge's all-pervasive attacks while facing the 2 evil knights who were famous for their tyrannical strength. Naturally, he had to divert most of his attention. In this way, the 3 strange creatures' special attack method was naturally effective. Lia Kane was instantly injured by Little Skull's sneak attack and then trampled to death by the evil knights. More than 100 dark creatures submerged Lia Kane in an instant. The surrounding nobles and attendants were blocked by the dark creatures and couldn't clearly see what was happening. They could only hear Lia Kane's mournful screams. When Lia Kane's mournful screams gradually subsided, Han Shuo, who was standing proudly in the air, slowly chanted an incantation and sent all the summoned creatures back to the other dimension. When the dark creatures had dispersed, there wasn't even bone residue left in the center of the lawn, apart from blood. Everyone understood that Lia Kane was done for. He must have been torn apart and eaten by the dark creatures. The large amount of undried blood on the ground was proof of this fact. He's done for. Lia Kane is dead. He should be dead. Oh, how is this possible? He was killed so quickly. The onlookers looked at Han Shuo, who was standing proudly in the air, and then looked at the bloodstains on the lawn. They all knew that the battle was over. Han Shuo had successfully killed the mad great sword master of the Brute Merchant Alliance, Lia Kane. Han Shuo had won this battle fair and square. He had displayed a miraculous martial skill from start to finish. In the end, he had used the most effective human wave tactic used by necromancers to drown a great sword master. This battle could be called a classic no matter how one looked at it. Especially Lia Kane's cold drizzle attack and Han Shuo's miraculous martial skill of splitting himself into four. They were deeply imprinted in their memories. Amidst the hubbub of discussion below, Han Shuo stood proudly in the air, whistling towards the sky as he soared into the distance. He elegantly and confidently disappeared into a black dot until no one could see a trace of him anymore. Not only did the onlookers in the garden house know of Han Shuo's great victory, even the commoners on the streets around the garden house knew that Han Shuo had won after seeing Han Shuo fly away. They all cheered loudly, as if they were celebrating a festival. First Prince Charles's face was frighteningly gloomy. No matter how he guessed, he never thought that Lia Kane would lose. This was simply unrealistic for him. The great merchant Cameron's expression was even more unsightly than Charles's. Standing behind Charles, Cameron's face was ashen. His gaze was lifeless as he stared blankly, completely at a loss as to what to do. As the operator behind the scenes of this wagered fight, Cameron had also bet his hard-earned capital. Just Fanny's Buzz Merchant Guild alone would cost Cameron his hard-earned capital. In contrast to him was Phoebe. The originally cold and arrogant Phoebe's face was now filled with uncontrollable excitement. Her small cherry mouth couldn't help but mutter to herself, I'm rich, I'm rich! Heh heh, heh heh, Brian, oh Brian, you really didn't disappoint me. Lawrence looked at Charles's gloomy expression and felt that he had never felt so carefree before. He laughed heartily and swaggered away from Charles and Cameron with Phoebe. Let's go, father! Although Emily already knew that this would happen, as the woman behind Han Shuo, she still felt endlessly honored when she saw Han Shuo display his invincible might. The corners of her mouth curved into a happy arc as she said to old Han with a smile, Inconceivable, an inconceivable kid, hee hee! Old Han exclaimed in admiration as he walked out of the garden house with Emily. One by one, the officials and nobles walked out of the garden house. The details of Han Shuo's great victory over Lia Kane were quickly spread. For a time, the entire Asen city was talking about his elegant demeanor. Who knew how many noble ladies secretly regarded Han Shuo as an object of admiration? Who knew how many nobles wanted to recruit Han Shuo? Asen city, inside the imperial palace. Amis and Candide, who had left earlier, were in the same room as His Majesty the King of Lancelot Empire. Candide and Amis were softly narrating the course of events to the king. After a long while, King Uhtred of Lancelot Empire suddenly shouted in a carefree manner, Good, well done! I heard yesterday that he found the manufacturing blueprints. Today, he killed Lia Kane of the Brute Merchant Alliance. This kid is indeed worthy of my capital. Your Majesty, that's not all. Brian has grasped a mystical martial technique that is even more frightening. Not only can Brian become a top expert himself, if his martial technique can be popularized, it will have an immeasurable impact on the Lancelot Empire. Amis immediately added with a serious expression after Uhtred finished speaking. Uhtred was shocked when he heard these words. He asked in astonishment, What's going on? Rest assured, Your Majesty, I will help Brian quickly adapt to the life of a noble in the Empire. This kid's perception is very high. Sooner or later, he will become a pillar of the Empire. Candide immediately guaranteed in his joy after receiving the Medal of Bravery. Nodding his head, Uhtred smiled and said, All right, you guys can withdraw first. I will warn the Church of Light that they will not be allowed to act presumptuously in our Lancelot Empire. Hee hee. I believe that the title of Count is only the beginning for that kid. I hope he won't disappoint me. Candide and Amis glanced at each other, and didn't say anything else. They respectfully bowed and withdrew, directly returning to the dark mantle headquarters at Mt. Ordas behind the Imperial Palace through the secret tunnel. Candide would start preparing the matter of Han Shuo's noble title. Chapter 290. In just a few days, Han Shuo's name had spread throughout Asen City. Due to Han Shuo's identity as an archmage necromancer, as well as his killing of Liu Kang, he had proven his strength. Uhtred used the excuse of him finding the blueprint to confer the title of Earl on Han Shuo. There was a magnificent mansion in the north of the city, with guards, maids, servants, and housekeepers. There were more than 100 rooms of various sizes. This was directly bestowed upon Han Shuo by Uhtred. Although the title of Earl hadn't been officially bestowed upon him, it still couldn't stop the admiration and deliberate befriending of Han Shuo. From the day Han Shuo left the garden house, this magnificent mansion had officially belonged to Han Shuo. In the past few days, many high officials and nobles came to visit. Unfortunately, the housekeeper kept saying that the master hadn't moved in yet, so all the visitors could only leave their gifts behind. Han Shuo, who was the center of attention, didn't know what was going on outside. After leaving the garden house, he flew alone to the mountain behind the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force. He directly activated the transportation matrix at the entrance of the mountain and returned to the Cemetery of Death. After the battle with Liu Kang, Han Shuo felt that he had benefited greatly. He slowly comprehended what he had learned from the battle, slowly recovering his magical yuan and mental strength. After spending an entire night's time, Han Shuo's physical strength had reached its peak. He immersed himself in the bloodlust realm, his eyes bloodshot as he continuously circulated his magical yuan. Just like this, a few more days passed. Han Shuo's crimson eyes gradually returned to normal. He lightly sighed. I'm only one step away. Unfortunately, this step is like a bottleneck. I can't break through. I really don't know what's going on. Han Shuo could faintly feel that he was about to break through to the bloodlust realm. Unfortunately, no matter how hard Han Shuo tried, he couldn't smoothly break through to this realm. Breaking through in demonic magic required opportunity and comprehension. Perhaps after 1 or 2 days of comprehension, Han Shuo would be able to directly break through to the next realm. Once he grasped this one step, he would be able to immediately advance. Blindly wasting his energy on cultivation wasn't a good idea. When Han Shuo felt that he couldn't rely on bitter cultivation to advance, he couldn't help but temporarily give up on practicing demonic magic. After thinking for a moment, Han Shuo took out the skeletal staff with 3 skulls of 3 different colors. Now, Han Shuo was certain that this skeletal staff was transformed from the Eye of Darkness. This was because the handle of the staff had the aura of the Eye of Darkness. When Han Shuo used the skeletal staff to gather mental strength to cast spells, he could successfully open the Cemetery of Death. Compared to the white bone staff he'd obtained from the Calamity Church, this skeletal staff appeared to be much more exquisite and ancient. The 3 different skulls seemed to contain 3 different kinds of power. When Han Shuo held the skeletal staff in his hand, he could faintly sense a little bit of it. Without a doubt, this skeletal staff was definitely a treasure that belonged to the Cemetery of Death. Holding the skeletal staff and shaking it, Han Shuo murmured, "Let's try this skeletal staff. Fallen undead warriors, answer the call of the Dark Emissary and reveal your existence." An ordinary skeletal summoning spell was chanted by Han Shuo as he waved the skeletal staff. His mental strength poured into the skeletal staff, and the 3 skulls on the staff suddenly lit up. Then, a row of 16 skeletal warriors appeared out of thin air. Han Shuo was greatly shocked as he looked at the 16 skeletal warriors that had appeared out of thin air. With Han Shuo's Grand Magus level mental strength, he could only summon 8 skeletal warriors when he used the white bone staff to summon skeletal warriors. However, when he used the bone staff, he'd actually reached the highest level of summoning skeletal warriors, level 5. The number of skeletal warriors had directly doubled. "This is too miraculous!" Han Shuo couldn't help but exclaim. Then, he started chanting the Evil Knight summoning spell. When he finished chanting, 2 evil knights appeared out of thin air. "Multiplied!" Han Shuo was overjoyed. He then tried summoning the hate warriors and zombie warriors, but the results were the same. With the skeletal staff in hand, Han Shuo only needed to use the skeletal staff as a medium to chant spells, and the number of creatures he could summon doubled. After this experiment was successful, Han Sho impatiently chanted another incantation, casting the canopy of necromancy and acid bog. In the end, Han Sho discovered that both the canopy of necromancy and acid bog covered an area that was twice as wide as before. Good stuff, this really is good stuff. Caressing the skeletal staff, Han Sho couldn't bear to part with it. He hadn't thought that this skeletal staff would be so miraculous. It could actually double the power of all necromancy magic, allowing Han Sho's strength to increase once again. The skeletal staff had a peculiar appearance and seemed to be quite old. Apart from doubling the power of necromancy magic, Han Sho faintly felt that there were other secrets hidden within the skeletal staff. Unfortunately, apart from using the skeletal staff to cast necromancy magic, Han Sho couldn't find any other way to test it. A streak of white light flashed, and Emily's figure appeared in the transportation matrix at the center of the cemetery of death. Emily saw Han Sho as soon as she appeared, and immediately said, "I knew you should be here." The transportation matrix that connected to this place was in a crevice in the cemetery of death. Normally, Han Sho would travel to the cemetery of death from that secret location in the back mountains of the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force. Only Emily knew about this habit. Therefore, when Emily arrived there and saw the magic wands neatly arranged in the corner of the cemetery, she knew that Han Sho was definitely in the cemetery of death. Why have you come?" Han Sho smiled when he saw Emily appear, and immediately pulled Emily into his arms. "You should hurry back to Asan City. His Majesty the King has prepared the title of Count for you. Everything has been taken care of, and we're just waiting for you to return to Asan City to be conferred the title of Count for you. Who knew that you would disappear for several days, and even the Dark Mantle couldn't find any news about you? Lord Candide is burning with anxiety, and asked me to help him find a way to contact you. I guessed that you should be in the cemetery of death, and it looks like I've found the right person." Emily rolled her eyes at Han Sho and explained, "So it's like that?" Han Sho responded, then chuckled and asked, "Then, His Majesty the King is preparing to confer the title of Count on me?" "That's right. Apart from the title of Count, there's also a mansion in the northern part of the city, and 1,000 gold coins. In addition, Candide seems to have even asked about the matters of your territory, and is just waiting for you to take it over," Emily said. "Very good. I didn't think that the battle with Leah Kane would give me such great benefits. Heh, it looks like the title of nobility isn't that hard to obtain after all," Han Sho said with a smile, then stood in the transportation matrix with Emily. They activated the transportation matrix and directly returned to Asan City. Mount Ordas, Dark Mantle Headquarters. "Stinking brat, why did you disappear for 10 days? Candide immediately scolded when he saw Han Sho appear. "I suffered some minor injuries after the battle with Leah Kane. I had no choice but to hide and recuperate. That's why I was a bit late." Han Sho lied, then looked at Candide with a smile and congratulated him. "Congratulations, Lord Candide. I heard that His Majesty the King awarded you a Medal of Bravery 2 days ago." Congratulations." When Han Sho said this, Candide's gloomy face also revealed a bit of a smile. However, Candide quickly recovered and said with a straight face, All right, let's not talk about this for now. Give me your Dark Mantle Iron Medallion. His Majesty has directly ordered you to advance to the rank of a Dark Sun Emissary. Your luck is really too good. Let's go. Come with me to see His Majesty. Let His Majesty award you a noble title and bestow you with the territory you deserve." Candide said this and brought Han Sho directly to the Imperial Palace through the secret transportation matrix in the Dark Mantle headquarters. Not long after, King Uhtred summoned all the nobles of Asan City to see Han Sho in the vast Imperial Palace of the Lancelot Empire. Uhtred, who was sitting sideways on the throne, looked at Han Sho below and began to announce in a ceremonial manner, "Brian, for repeatedly helping the Lancelot Empire defend against foreign enemies, I bestow upon you the title of Count, a mansion in the northern part of the city, and 10,000 gold coins. I hope that you will continue to work hard and make even greater contributions to the Empire. Many thanks to your Majesty. Han Shuo, who had long since been warned by Candide, sincerely expressed his thanks. Yes, the easternmost Bretel city of the Empire will be your territory. This Bretel city occupies an enormous area, but it's also full of chaos. I hope that under your leadership, it will be restored to its rightful order. Uhtred raised his voice. When they heard that it was Bretel city, the nobles who were listening all revealed flabbergasted expressions, as if this Bretel city was very famous. Thank you, Your Majesty. I will definitely take a good look at Bretel city and restore it to the Empire's rightful order. Han Shuo replied respectfully. All right, that's all for today. Everyone is dismissed. Uhtred looked at Han Shuo a few more times, then waved his hand to indicate that the court meeting was over. Everyone left one after another. Chapter 291. Bretel City was located in the easternmost part of the Lancelot Empire. It was next to 7 duchies that were constantly at war. None of the 7 duchies were as strong as the Lancelot Empire, and were constantly at war all year round. However, once the Lancelot Empire attempted to invade the 7 duchies, the originally warring duchies would immediately unite and resist the Lancelot Empire's invasion. Individually, the 7 duchies couldn't contend against the Lancelot Empire. However, once the 7 duchies united, their strength would surpass the Lancelot Empire. Fortunately, the 7 duchies couldn't unite. Otherwise, if the Lancelot Empire really faced an attack from the 7 duchies, it would truly be somewhat difficult. Bretel City was one of the cities of the Lancelot Empire that was locked in a stalemate with the 7 duchies. Bretel City occupied an extremely large area. Unfortunately, because it was located in such a remote area, it was also affected by the war between the 7 duchies. There were all kinds of people mixed in the city. Brian, under normal circumstances, it's impossible for a count like you to possess such a large territory. Bretel City's area is about the same size as Valen City. Normally, only those with the title of Marquis have the qualifications to enjoy such a city. Bretel City is indeed a bit chaotic, but it's just right for a spirited young man like you to manage. Once you manage Bretel City well, it will be of great benefit to your future prospects. If you want to obtain the title of Marquis or Duke, it will depend on whether you can grasp the opportunity. Candide, one of the 3 heavyweights, looked at Han Shuo and explained in a deep voice in a secret room. Han Shuo, who was sitting opposite Candide and flipping through the information on Bretel City, nodded when he heard Candide's words. He put down the information in his hands and raised his head, saying, Bretel City is barren. The land can't be used to grow any crops, and only produces some special iron and silver ores. The 7 duchies are at war with each other all year round. Bandits and thieves run amok there. Even some duchies' regular armies can disguise themselves as bandits and loot the towns around Bretel City. Such a chaotic place with such a valiant people is indeed an interesting place. So, what do you think? The current Han Shuo was already a count. After killing Lia Kane in the garden house, Han Shuo's strength had been fully proven. Even Candide no longer treated Han Shuo with the attitude of a superior talking to a subordinate. It was as if he was treating Han Shuo as an equal. I don't have any plans for now. Wait until I get to Bretel City and see the situation. Han Shuo replied indifferently. That's good. Keep these documents well. They will prove your status as a Lord of Bretel City. The former Lord of Bretel City has been deposed due to his incompetence. The City Lord's mansion of Bretel City is now yours. You can take over everything with these documents. Also, Bretel City has Bretel, and Bretel City Army. Perhaps you aren't good at leading troops into battle, but I think Lawrence will communicate with you in this regard. You only need to protect Bretel City from being invaded by those duchies and bandits, and maintain order within the city. Candide said. All right, then I'll leave first. If there's anything, I'll contact you through the magic mirror at the Dark Mantle Stronghold in Bretel City. Han Shuo nodded and said this to Candide before leaving the Dark Mantle headquarters. In a mansion in the north of the city, Han Shuo strode in. A butler was already waiting in front of the door. Upon seeing Han Shuo walk in, he immediately said respectfully, "Honorable Count, you have finally returned. My name is Carlos, and I am the butler of your mansion." "Hello, Carlos. Can you tell me more about the matters regarding the mansion?" Han Shuo asked with a faint smile. Carlos was a white-haired old man. His clothes were not extravagant, but they were clean and tidy. His manner of speaking was refined and courteous. He should have been in this line of work for many years. After hearing Han Shuo's words, Carlos immediately said respectfully, "Honorable Count, this mansion has belonged to you since you defeated Liu Kang. Everything is operating normally inside. In the past few days, a total of 35 Asan City nobles have come to visit you. We have received a total of 73 gifts, all of which have been properly stored away." As Carlos spoke in a soft voice, Han Shuo noted down all sorts of information regarding the mansion. From Carlos, Han Shuo learned that many nobles' territories weren't in Asan City. However, they would have a mansion in Asan City that was usually used to stay when meeting with His Majesty the King. Of course, there were also some nobles whose territories weren't flourishing enough. They didn't like to live in their own territories, so there were many nobles who lived directly in Asan City. In short, it was fine as long as they returned to their territories regularly to handle some matters and ensure that there wouldn't be any major disturbances within their territories. This mansion had been bestowed upon him by His Majesty the King. There were all sorts of maids, servants, and stewards within. Han Shuo had the right to dismiss them, and had to pay them a certain amount of salary every month in order for them to maintain the normal operations of the mansion. Carlos had described some miscellaneous matters in great detail. "All right, Mr. Carlos, I understand all of this. All right, bring me to the drawing room and invite Lawrence and Miss Phoebe over. I want to see the two of them. If anyone else asks, just tell them I'm not here." Through the Eden Demon's observation, Han Shuo had already discovered that there were many people who came to make friends with him in this mansion. These people were arranged in different rooms, so they couldn't know each other's movements. The Eden Demon that had been injured during the battle with Liu Kang had already recovered after being nourished by the blood essence in the cemetery of death. Although he had used up a few drops of blood essence, the Eden Demon was no longer in danger. "Yes, Lord Count," Carlos responded and brought Han Shuo into a spacious drawing room before respectfully withdrawing. This drawing room was as big as a basketball court. 7 bright lights hung from the ceiling, and the floor was covered with a soft carpet. There were many comfortable chairs placed around it, making it look very spacious and bright. After a while, Lawrence and Phoebe came over together. Lawrence laughed heartily and said to Han Shuo as soon as he entered, "Brian, congratulations. I heard that His Majesty the King was conferring a title on you today, so I found Phoebe and came over together. I thought that you would come back." After winning a large sum of gold coins, Phoebe appeared to be glowing. Her charming face was filled with a bright luster as she looked at Han Shuo with a fiery gaze and said, "Brian, Cameron is finished this time. The merchant alliance he formed suffered a huge loss because of him. His allies no longer trust him. The crisis facing our Boost Empire has been resolved." Seeing the two so happy, Han Shuo smiled and nodded, saying, "I plan to go to Bretel City. It's full of chaos and very interesting. If Bretel City can develop well in my hands, it will also be beneficial for you, Lawrence. I already knew that you would be in charge of Bretel City. Bretel City is indeed very chaotic. The personalities of the commoners are much tougher than those of Asan City. The armies and bandits of the Grand Duchies would occasionally loot some of the surrounding villages. For so many years, the city lord of Bretel City has been powerless. This caused the merchants of Bretel City to leave the city one by one. The nobles and commoners have lost confidence in Bretel City. I reckon that it won't be easy for you to quickly take control of the situation once you arrive in Bretel City. Lawrence said with a frown when he heard Han Sho mention Bretel City's matters. The Lancelot Empire had sent out armies many times in an attempt to invade the 7 Grand Duchies through Bretel City. However, they returned in defeat time and time again, causing the Lancelot Empire to finally give up on this idea. After the armies had retreated, the remaining tens of thousands of Bretel City's city guards couldn't contend against any of the duchies. It had become a habit for those duchies to take the opportunity to loot Bretel City. However, although the 7 Grand Duchies had the strength to occupy Bretel City, they didn't do so due to their mutual misgivings and fear of provoking the Lancelot Empire. They only looted Bretel City from time to time, but never truly occupied the city. Therefore, the city lord of Bretel City was very sullen. Bretel City itself wasn't as strong as any of the Grand Duchies. Bretel City's land was barren, but it wasn't small. However, there wasn't much profit to be reaped from it. His Majesty the Empire also wasn't willing to spend a huge amount of manpower and resources to garrison Bretel City to resist the 7 Grand Duchies. In this way, Bretel City had become a tasteless existence, but a pity to abandon. It would be a pity to abandon it, but there wouldn't be any profit to be made if they didn't abandon it. Therefore, it was very awkward. Don't worry, I know what kind of place Bretel City is. I have my own plans. In any case, His Majesty has given me full authority to manage Bretel City. I will take good care of Bretel City. Han Sho chuckled evilly as he answered in a mysterious and unfathomable manner. What do you plan to do? Lawrence asked after a blank stare. You will know when the time comes. I will make Bretel City even more chaotic, Han Sho said with an evil smile. Chapter 292. Senior Brother Lawrence, I have some things I want to discuss with Brian alone. Phoebe glanced at Lawrence and said softly. Lawrence stared blankly for a moment before coming to his senses. He chuckled and said, All right, don't worry, Brian. Before you head to Bretel City, I will arrange for some generals who are good at fighting to go first. Nodding his head, Han Sho smiled and said, Then many thanks. I really don't know much about some battle strategies. With the help of your people, I think they will definitely be of great help to me. All right, you guys chat, I'll be heading back first. After a while, I will personally go to Bretel City to visit you. Lawrence winked at Han Sho and Phoebe, then walked out of the living room with a smile. After Lawrence left, Han Sho immediately took a step forward and pulled Phoebe into his arms. After a series of lingering kisses, Han Sho directly carried Phoebe and fiercely rushed into the bedroom. He forcefully flung Phoebe onto the spacious and soft bed, then Han Sho pressed down on top of her. As their clothes flew off, the two naked bodies were entangled together. Phoebe's low moans were seductive as she desperately catered to Han Sho's thrusts. They were entangled until there wasn't a trace of strength left in them. After the violent storm subsided, Phoebe lazily leaned on Han Sho's wide chest. Her delicate fingers gently slid down Han Sho's body as she murmured in satisfaction. I can't leave with you for the time being. Cameron's merchant union is facing the crisis of disintegration because of the huge losses from this bet. Our Buzz Merchant Guild has made a huge profit this time. It's a good opportunity to clean up the mess and make it difficult for Cameron to escape this time. You should first deal with the matters of your merchant guild. Brettel's place is very chaotic. Wait for me to stabilize the situation first. Han Sho softly said as he gently caressed Phoebe's tender shoulders. Oh, right, there are some missing materials from last time. I've collected all of them for you during this period of time, so I'll give you these first. Phoebe suddenly remembered the list that Han Sho had given her last time. There were still a few rare materials missing. She exclaimed softly. As soon as he said this, Han Sho was pleasantly surprised and said, That's great! The place of extreme water was in the Valley of Sunshine. Now that all the materials had been gathered, Han Sho could first plant the Water Elite Zombie in the place of extreme water. After a while, he could directly harvest the Earth Elite Zombie. Phoebe lazily rubbed her space ring and materials slowly appeared one by one. Han Shaw conveniently put them into his space ring. When all of this was done, Phoebe took out a crystal card and handed it to Han Shaw with a smile. I made a huge profit from this time's bet. There are 300,000 gold coins in this crystal card. You've just arrived in Bretel City, so you'll definitely need money. Take it first. Hee, so these 300,000 gold coins belong to you. I've also bet all the gold coins you've handed over to me before. You've made a huge profit, haven't you? The Buzz Merchant Guild had taken out 700,000 gold coins to bet on Han Shu and Lia Kane. According to the odds of 1 to 5, the Buzz Merchant Guild had won 3,500,000 gold coins from this bet. 355,000 gold coins was definitely a huge sum. Most large families would only have this much wealth accumulated over hundreds of years. Even the Buzz Merchant Guild itself was only worth around 1,500,000 gold coins before this bet. But because of this grand bet, the Buzz Merchant Guild's wealth had doubled. This also meant that the Buzz Merchant Guild had officially become a major financial magnate in the Lancelot Empire. 300,000 gold coins wasn't even a tenth of the bet's total, but it was a huge fortune for Han Shu. Looking at Phoebe's charming face that was asking for a reward, Han Shu was ecstatic as he slapped Phoebe's perky butt and said with a laugh, "Not bad, the gold coins in your hands are indeed in the right hands." "Of course," Phoebe said proudly. 300,000 gold coins in Han Shu's hands was like a meat pie falling from the sky. In his joy, Han Shu ignored Phoebe's pleas and directly hugged Phoebe, pounding into her until Phoebe didn't even have the strength to speak. The next day, the slowly awakened Phoebe left Han Shu's mansion through the back door under Han Shu's escort. After Phoebe left, Han Shu returned to his bedroom and opened a cupboard. He used the key to fiddle around in the dark crevice, and a passageway automatically split open under the cupboard. Every noble's mansion usually had a secret room to store things or do some secret things that couldn't be known by others. This mansion bestowed by His Majesty was no exception. When Candide had met with Han Shu at the Dark Mantle headquarters, he'd already told Han Shu all the secrets of this mansion, including this underground secret room. Walking down the passageway, Han Shu saw a large, empty room. Apart from a few empty cupboards, there was nothing else inside. Placing the magic wand in one of the cupboards, Han Shu directly passed through the transportation matrix and arrived at the Cemetery of Death. The Cemetery of Death was gloomy all year round. Apart from the white bones that littered the ground, there were no signs of life or change. After leaving the Cemetery of Death, Han Shu let out a light breath and gazed into the depths of the dark forest, concentrating his senses. Why hasn't the fire lead zombie finished so late this time? Han Shu frowned and muttered to himself in confusion. The Earth Elite Zombie and Wood Elite Zombie definitely hadn't been unearthed for as long as the Fire Elite Zombie. If it wasn't for the fact that Han Shu could sense the Fire Elite Zombie's prolonged aura, Han Shu really would have thought that something had happened to him. Could it be because of the fire attribute treasure, the Fire Lotus, or because the Lord of the Flames is there? Han Shu pondered for a moment, and guessed inwardly. Unlike the Earth Elite Zombie and Wood Elite Zombie, the place of extreme fire had nurtured the fire attribute treasure, the Fire Lotus. Chu Kanglin's memories didn't describe what would happen if that happened. In addition, there was a terrifying Lord of the Flames there. What was even more peculiar was that the Lord of the Flames seemed to have treated the Fire Elite Zombie as his child. With so many strange things added together, the Fire Elite Zombie must have been affected. Otherwise, the Fire Elite Zombie wouldn't have taken so long to emerge. Forget it, I'll plant the Water Elite Zombie for now. Han Shu didn't think too much about it. Since he could still sense the Fire Elite Zombie's aura, he knew that there shouldn't be any problems. Therefore, he decided to first go to the Valley of Sunshine and plant the Water Elite Zombie in the place of extreme water. It didn't take long for Han Shu to fly from the dark forest to the Valley of Sunshine's sphere of influence. Han Shuo first arrived at the Soul Destroyer mercenary group and landed on that strange cliff. Strangely, Han Shuo didn't sense the aura of Dark Dragon Gilbert. He only saw Grant when he entered the cliff. When Grant saw Han Shuo arrive, he immediately bowed respectfully and explained. Leader and Gilbert took on a mission and aren't here for the time being. What's the situation like now? Han Shuo and the three demons circled around and discovered that the number of mercenaries here had increased by 200. These 200 people were all unfamiliar faces. Therefore, he understood that the Soul Destroyer mercenary band was in the process of expanding. What else could it be? The major powers have gone from fighting in the dark to fighting openly. They've been fighting fiercely during this period of time. Loriton's Cairo mercenary band is the most powerful. The other three parties have no choice but to band together and fight against the Cairo mercenary band. A few bandit powers occasionally participate. In any case, the Valley of Sunshine is in a mess now. Grant smiled as he explained to Han Shuo. Oh, right. After the previous incident, did the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band and the House of Menlo come looking for trouble with you? Han Shuo recalled that he had killed Ferguson and heavily injured Adam Menlo. He couldn't help but ask in astonishment. Heh, those two parties indeed hate our Soul Destroyer mercenary band. Unfortunately, they don't know where we are. Even if they want to take revenge, they don't know how. Grant seemed very pleased with himself as he laughed heartily. I see that there are many new faces in the mercenary band. Will there be any problems with these people? Han Shuo's heart moved as he asked. Don't worry. The mercenaries we've chosen have all gone through strict checks. Those who can enter this area are all trustworthy. Thanks to your help last time, Loriton has allowed us to recruit in the Valley of Sunshine. This has saved us a lot of effort. Grant looked gratefully at Han Shuo as he smiled. All right, since Trunks and the others aren't here, I'll be leaving first. After inquiring about the information he needed to know, Han Shuo bid farewell to Grant and flew directly to the Valley of Sunshine. The members of the glorious Tanai Cairo mercenary band had already gotten to know Han Shuo. When they saw that Han Shuo was entering the valley, they didn't have to go through any formalities and even smiled at Han Shuo. Their attitude towards Han Shuo was very friendly. After Han Shuo entered the Valley of Sunshine, he headed straight for the shop. When he arrived at the Merchant Union, he activated the Great Formation without another word and descended into the well. He took out the materials from his space ring and sank to the bottom of the well. He summoned Little Skull at the bone-chilling bottom of the well. According to Han Shuo's instructions, Little Skull summoned an ordinary-looking zombie with the next summoning spell. Then, the Little Skull disappeared and Han Shuo pressed the zombie warrior into the center of the place of extreme water. He threw in all the strange materials and gathered all the water element energy in the place of extreme water towards the zombie warrior. Chapter 293. With the experience of refining the earth, wood, and fire elite zombies, Han Shuo didn't spend too much effort on the water elite zombie. When Han Shuo had finished and leapt out of the well, Han Shuo suddenly sensed two unfamiliar presences. The Shura Soul Formation was still operating in the courtyard of the shop, and it was filled with a deathly aura. The Calamity Church's Dark Grand Magus Edwin and the female alchemist Belinda were pacing back and forth outside the formation, not daring to enter. They looked at the gloomy courtyard from the surrounding rooftops. The aura of death within the Shura Soul Formation was thick, and the two of them couldn't clearly see what Han Shuo was doing inside. Han Shuo could clearly see the two experts of the Calamity Church when he walked out of the well and raised his head. Edwin and Belinda obviously knew that great danger lay below. Therefore, although they looked at the changes below with astonishment, they didn't dare take the risk of entering the formation. They appeared to be quite cautious. Han Shuo knew that Edwin and Belinda had already understood the dangers of this place when the experts of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band had ambushed this place last time. It was only natural that they didn't dare approach this time. Han Shuo walked to the eye of the formation and sent a beam of dark light into it. The originally howling wind and deathly aura of death dissipated in an instant, and the formation returned to its normal state. Han Shuo sat down on the chair in the middle and looked lazily at Edwin on the rooftop. He said faintly, "Mr. Edwin, it seems that you're always this sneaky every time you come. Is this how your Calamity Church does things?" Although the strange changes in the courtyard had disappeared, Edwin and Belinda didn't dare walk down. They chuckled and said, "Sorry, let's chat up here for a while. Congratulations on killing Ferguson, but you've also angered the Church of Light. They'll pay any price to deal with you this time. Heh, our Calamity Church sincerely invites you to join us. As long as you're willing to join us, we'll pay any price." "Sorry, I'm not interested." Han Shuo had rejected them last time, and now Han Shuo was still rejecting them without any room for discussion. "All right then. Since you're not willing to join our Calamity Church, can we discuss our cooperation? Hee, the Church of Light has already dispatched a small group of Temple Knights. Their goal should be to deal with you. Although there aren't many Temple Knights, they are all true experts. This is the Church of Light's sharp sword for eradicating heresy. They are on their way to Bretel City and are waiting for you. Even if you didn't come to the Valley of Sunshine this time, our people would have notified you when you arrived at Bretel City. I didn't think I'd be able to meet you here, so I'll tell you in advance. Let's see if there's any possibility of us cooperating." Edwin was very sincere, telling Han Shuo such an important piece of news first. Han Shuo couldn't help but frown when he heard Edwin's words. The headquarters of the Church of God of Light was located in the most powerful Odin Empire on the Profound Continent. There was also the Angela Empire between the Odin Empire and the Lancelot Empire. The Temple Knights had always protected the Church of God of Light. For them to dispatch a small group of Temple Knights just for Han Shuo, it seemed that the Church of Light had truly made up its mind. "I won't be cooperating with you for the time being, but I might contact you if I need anything." Han Shuo thought for a moment and said to Edwin. Edwin immediately chuckled when he heard Han Shuo's words. "Our Calamity Church and the Church of Light are mortal enemies on the Profound Continent. The enemies of the Church of Light are our friends. All right then, our Calamity Church might appear by your side when you run into trouble. We'll meet again then." Edwin and Belinda didn't linger after saying this. They looked at each other and cautiously left Han Shuo's roof, quickly disappearing from sight. Han Shuo immediately moved after Edwin and Belinda left. He released all three of his demons and had them follow behind Edwin and Belinda. He wanted to see why the two were staying in the Valley of Sunshine. Edwin and Belinda were extremely careful and made many turns along the way, on guard against enemies following them. However, their figures still couldn't hide under the surveillance of the three demons. In the end, Edwin and Belinda actually entered the headquarters of the Cairo mercenary band together. Because they were tailing them in secret this time, Han Shuo didn't openly enter the Cairo mercenary band. Instead, he hid in a place not far from Tanai and used the three demons to spy on Edwin's movements. Han Shuo had actually guessed that Edwin had hooked up with Loriton when Edwin and Belinda had snuck up on him. Otherwise, Edwin and Belinda wouldn't have been able to find him so quickly after Han Shuo had returned to the Valley of Sunshine for only a few hours. The Valley of Sunshine was the Cairo mercenary band's sphere of influence, and the Calamity Church's eyes weren't that wide. "Mr. Edwin, you went to see Brian?" Loriton immediately asked when Edwin arrived. Nodding, Edwin thanked him with a smile. "Thank you for informing me. I just saw Brian." "Oh right, how are the preparations coming along?" "The 300 death guards of the Calamity Church will arrive in the Valley of Sunshine in the next 2 days. Anyone can get the mithril mine, but we can't let the Church of Light take it. Otherwise, if they make mithril armor out of it and equip the Templars, it'll bring us great trouble in the future." Loriton's expression was cold as he said in a sinister voice, "Don't worry, as soon as your death guards arrive, I'll immediately mobilize the Cairo mercenary band and flatten the powers around the mithril mine. Humph, I almost died there last time. I won't be so careless this time. The three great powers will pay with blood this time. That's for the best. If the Church of Light wants the Mithril mine, then we'll make them pay with their lives. Edwin had a sinister smile on his face as he discussed the details of the operation with Loriton. Han Sho listened for a while and memorized all the contents of their conversation. When Edwin and Belinda were about to leave, Han Sho took the lead and silently left the Cairo mercenary band. After leaving the Cairo mercenary band, Han Sho immediately left the Valley of Sunshine and returned to the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. He once again inquired about Trunks and the others' movements. From Grant, Han Sho learned that Trunks and Gilbert would need some time before they could return. Han Sho didn't stay in the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. He immediately flew back to the Cemetery of Death and returned to the secret room in his mansion. Not long after he walked out of the secret room, Steward Kalos respectfully said to Han Sho, "My Lord Count, there's a young lady called Fanny who wishes to see you. She says that as long as you mention her name, you'll definitely see her." Han Sho blanked and suddenly remembered his promise to Fanny. When he'd left last time, Han Sho had said that he'd look for her within a few days. Who knew that he'd become so busy that he'd forgotten about this? Now, Fanny had actually come looking for him. "She's there, take me to her." Now that Han Sho had his own mansion, if Fanny and Phoebe frequently came looking for him, the relationship between Han Sho and them would be exposed sooner or later. Just thinking about this gave Han Sho a headache. Seeing him so anxious, Steward Kalos was somewhat astonished. He immediately said respectfully, "My Lord Count, please come with me." After a while, Kalos brought Han Sho to the room where Fanny was. He pointed inside and said, "Miss Fanny is inside. You can leave first. Don't let anyone come in," Han Sho instructed. After Kalos left, Han Sho braced himself and walked in. With a glance, he saw Fanny sitting in the center. This time, Fanny wasn't wearing a magic robe. Instead, she changed into a navy blue dress. When she saw Han Sho walk in, she immediately snorted coldly and looked at Han Sho with cold eyes. "My Lord Count, you finally have the time to come see us commoners? I'm sorry. Because of some matters I was a bit late. It won't be like this in the future. Fanny, you must forgive me." Han Sho smiled wryly. Apologizing as soon as he'd walked in meant that he was in the wrong. It was only natural that Fanny would be so angry. This isn't the first time. It seems that you've never fulfilled your promises. Fanny's face was still expressionless as she looked coldly at Han Sho. Smiling wryly at Fanny, Han Sho raised his hand and said, "I was wrong. You can punish me however you want. All right then, I'll forgive you as long as you promise me that you'll be an honorary teacher of the necromancy major." Fanny thought for a moment and glared fiercely at Han Sho before speaking. Being an honorary teacher of the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force was only a title in name, and didn't need to be bound by the rules of the Academy. They might only occasionally give a few lectures and answer questions when invited by the Academy. The various majors of the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force competed with each other. Being able to find a few famed experts within the Empire to be an honorary teacher was a measure of the strength of each major. "No problem," Han Sho readily agreed. "You bastard, how could you kill that evil person Liakane? How did you become an archmage necromancer? Just how many other things have you lied to me about?" Fanny was delighted when she saw Han Sho agree, but then a series of questions erupted. Chapter 294. Han Sho had managed to make Fanny, who had come to denounce him, beam with joy in just half an hour. Under his gentle words, a faint smile appeared at the corner of Fanny's mouth as she left Han Sho's mansion in satisfaction. Arriving at the Buzz Merchant Guild at the fastest speed to find Phoebe, Han Sho went straight to the point and requested, "I want explosives, the kind with the most destructive explosive power, enough to flatten a small mountain." "Heavens, what do you want?" As a normal woman, Phoebe didn't need to move her toes to know what Han Shuo wanted. Her pretty face was filled with shock when she heard that Han Shuo needed explosives so urgently, and the more explosive the better. Don't ask so much, get it for me as soon as possible, don't let anyone know. Since Han Shuo had made up his mind, he wouldn't hesitate. Time waited for no man, naturally the sooner the better. Once a woman had a physical relationship with a man, even a cold and arrogant character like Phoebe would change for this man. Especially when Phoebe knew that Han Shuo was smart, and wouldn't do something stupid that would result in his death. Therefore, although she had some doubts, she didn't insist on asking more when Han Shuo urged her again. She immediately nodded. Give me some time, I'll try to gather it through other channels. All right. I'll come back the day after tomorrow at the latest to get the explosives. Don't leave for the next 2 days. Han Shuo instructed and hurriedly left the buzzed merchant guild. Han Shuo silently returned to the secret room in his mansion and used the transportation matrix to return to the cemetery of death. He used the art of the demonic ninth heavens to fly to the mountain valley where the mithril mine was located and summoned the Earth Elite Zombie to descend upon this plain. The 3 demons slowly floated out and flew into the valley. Faces after faces leapt into Han Shuo's mind. The Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band, the House of Menlo, and the Catter Orc Alliance had more than 1,000 people stationed near the valley. They had surrounded the entire valley. The mithril mine was still in operation. However, due to the steep and narrow terrain of the mine, mining the mithril was not an easy task, especially since the mithril ore was mixed in with the silver ore and often existed in the deepest part of the mine. Therefore, although the 3 forces worked overtime these days, the progress of the project was still not satisfactory. The 3 demons circled around every corner of the valley. The Earth Elite Zombie hid in the ground, shuttling back and forth like 2 Xingsuan. According to Han Shuo's mental control, he left many holes in the depths of the valley that couldn't be seen, just in case Phoebe hid her explosives. From Lorton and Edwin's conversation, Han Shuo knew that there would be a bloody battle in the valley. Most of the forces of the 4 great powers in the Valley of Sunshine would be involved in this battle, including Lorton's Cairo mercenary band, as well as the 10 or so small powers that Lorton had tied together with various benefits. Due to the existence of the mithril mine, the other 3 powers had invested a large amount of troops here. Once the battle broke out, this valley would become the largest battlefield in the history of the Valley of Sunshine. What Han Shuo needed to do was throw in enough explosives to destroy all the powers in the Valley of Sunshine in one fell swoop. This matter had to be done very carefully. Only the Earth Elite Zombie's miraculous ability to drill into the ground would be able to complete this mission without anyone noticing. At this time, Han Shuo had released the 3 demons. He hadn't discovered that Tanai had an Earth Mage, so he was even more daring to have the Earth Elite Zombie set up the traps. Even with the Earth Elite Zombie's miraculous ability, it still took a while to set up the tunnels in Tanai. During this time, Han Shuo kept an eye on the experts stationed in Tanai through the demons. He was deeply afraid that these people would sense the abnormalities in the ground and discover this time setup. It was a good thing that everything went smoothly. When the Earth Elite Zombie finished setting up the tunnels, Han Shuo immediately left the valley. He'd been studying the Archmage level, Soul Tremor, spell in the Cemetery of Death, and he'd felt that this spell was incomparably cryptic and difficult to understand. Soul Tremor used one's own mental strength to directly attack the opponent's soul. In order to master this spell, one must first have a certain amount of research on the soul. In addition, one also needed to grasp the technique of mental strength attacks. Even Han Shuo found it difficult to gather one mental strength into an attack. As he paced around the Cemetery of Death, Han Shuo furrowed his brow as he thought about the method of mental strength attacks. When Han Shuo concentrated his mental strength, he could clearly feel the formless mental strength. However, to turn it into a tangible attack, no matter how hard Han Shuo tried, he couldn't do it. It's indeed a bit difficult, Han Shuo muttered to himself. He couldn't help but concentrate his mental strength, trying to form it into a tangible attack. The consciousness is formless, but has boundless uses. Its attacks are based on the heart, and the heart will move. Han Shuo suddenly remembered a paragraph of a demonic mantra. This was a description of the consciousness in demonic magic. When demonic magic reached the next separate demonic realm, demonic practitioners would be able to clearly sense the consciousness. The consciousness was actually a process of strengthening the soul. When a demonic practitioner reached a separate demonic realm, their soul would transform into the consciousness. As long as the consciousness wasn't destroyed, the demonic practitioner would be able to obtain eternal life. The consciousness was a formless existence. Once the soul transformed into the consciousness, it would have many wondrous uses. The simplest use was to use the consciousness to sense the changes in the surroundings. The clarity and range of the senses would vary according to the strength of the consciousness. When fighting with others, as long as the consciousness was strong enough, it could directly form all kinds of strange attacks on the enemy, such as illusions or physical attacks. It could also control the opponent's mind, turning them into a puppet, and other wondrous uses. The consciousness could also be used to attack the enemy's soul, but it was much more profound than mental strength. The demonic magic had a detailed explanation of the attack methods of the consciousness. Han Shuo recalled these memories and seemed to have grasped something. He felt that the consciousness and mental strength had the same wondrous uses. The difference was that the consciousness was the transformation of the demonic practitioner's soul. Like the demonic infant, it was the most important foundation of the demonic practitioner. The consciousness was even more important than the demonic infant. The demonic infant was the source of the demonic practitioner's power. It provided the practitioner with an endless supply of demonic yuan. Once the demonic infant was destroyed, the practitioner would lose all of his power. There wouldn't be any demonic yuan left in his body, and he would become an ordinary person. The consciousness was the demonic practitioner's soul. Once the demonic infant was destroyed, as long as the consciousness wasn't destroyed, the practitioner could use past experience to rebuild the demonic infant. However, once the consciousness was destroyed, the practitioner's soul would truly scatter, never leaving a trace in the world. On the other hand, mental strength was the same as the demonic infant. Even if one lost all of their mental strength, they would at most be unable to gather magical elements to cast spells. It would only turn a magus into an ordinary person, and wouldn't take their life. In the cemetery of death, Han Shuo continued to ponder, especially when it came to the detailed theory of attacks on the consciousness. Han Shuo carefully and slowly comprehended it. Gradually, he seemed to have grasped something. When he gathered all of his mental strength and calmed his mind, a thought suddenly leapt into his mind. His mental strength suddenly became very active, and a wondrous fluctuation was suddenly produced. At this moment, Han Shuo quickly chanted a magical incantation. A strange energy was produced out of nowhere, and quickly merged with his mental strength. A wave-like impact suddenly appeared, drifting forward like ripples in the water. Oh, there's some progress. What's missing? Han Shuo let out a light breath. He had just felt his mental strength condense, and form some kind of tangible attack in front of him. However, since there was no soul in front of him, Han Shuo's attack couldn't find a target. Therefore, he wasn't sure if this attack would be effective or not. It looks like I'll need to find a living person to test it out on, Han Shuo murmured to himself. He thought for a moment, and discovered that it was getting late, so he immediately left the cemetery of death. Again, without waiting for a report, Han Shuo directly went to the Buzz Merchant Guild and found Phoebe in her room. He asked, "How is it?" "I've gathered some, but due to the lack of time and the fact that the gunpowder is a dangerous item banned by the country, the amount isn't enough to blow up a small mountain. If you give me a bit more time, I can go to a city further away and gather more." Phoebe looked helplessly at Han Shuo and said a bit apologetically, "There's not enough time. Just gather as much as you can. It's best not to let anyone know about this." Otherwise, there might be some trouble, Han Sho said with a frown. Don't worry, I'm doing this through a few small merchant guilds. Moreover, I'm secretly buying them in batches. I don't think there will be any problems, Phoebe replied. Afterwards, Phoebe's space ring continuously flashed as bundles of wrapped explosives passed through Phoebe's hand and fell into Han Sho's space ring. Only when Phoebe had handed all the explosives to Han Sho did she ask, Brian, what are you planning to do? You're not thinking of destroying Bretel City, are you? It has nothing to do with Bretel City. I haven't returned there yet, Han Sho casually replied, hugging Phoebe and kissing her. He said with a smile, All right, don't worry about me. I know what I'm doing. Under Phoebe's astonished gaze, Han Sho hurriedly left the Boost Merchant Guild and directly used the transportation matrix in the Cemetery of Death to return. He quickly flew towards the mountain valley where the mithril mine was. Chapter 295. The night was like water, watering Tanai Mountain. Spring had arrived, and the fragrance of flowers and grass was still intoxicating even at night. Danger lurked in the quiet night, accompanied by the low cries of insects. There were teams of mercenaries stationed in every corner of the mithril mine. The calm was filled with caution and vigilance. A team of black-armored figures were like shadows in the dark night, slowly moving through the lush shrubbery with a sinister and mysterious aura. Dark Grand Magus Edwin floated in the air, leading the way. 300 death guards were like specters, silently following behind Edwin. With Lorton in the lead, the 2,000 Cairo mercenaries followed behind the 300 death guards, slowly advancing towards the mithril mine. Behind the Cairo mercenary band was a group of 10 or so small factions. There were about 1,000 experts wearing mercenary uniforms of various colors. In the valley where the mithril mine was located, the three factions had gathered to guard this place. However, because the three factions still needed to guard their lair, they only had a total of more than 1,000 mercenaries guarding the mithril mine in the valley. These 1,000 or so mercenaries were 3 times less than Lorton's 2,000 elite mercenaries, 300 death guards from the Calamity Church, and 1,000 experts from the 10 small factions. Dark Grand Magus Edwin released a dark magic spell, and a black mass of air slowly spread out. The area in front of the valley that was lit up by the moonlight was suddenly enveloped in a faint layer of mist, as if the moisture of the night was slowly gathering together. For some unknown reason, the insects that had been chirping in a low voice gradually lost all signs of life. Arthur, the Wind Archmage of the House of Menlo, was currently resting with his eyes closed. He seemed to have sensed the abnormal movements, and couldn't help but open his eyes to look outside the valley. He muttered to himself, What's going on? Why aren't there any sounds of insects around? In a tent to Arthur's left, the orc warrior Callery called out in a low, muffled voice. Hey Arthur, it's getting late. Rest early. I feel like something's wrong. I'll go take a look. Arthur mumbled to himself as he walked out of his tent. He used levitation to float into the air and looked out of the valley. Huh! Why is it foggy? Arthur muttered to himself as he slowly floated out of the valley. There were all sorts of tents in the valley, and there were also a few high-spirited mercenaries in charge of night patrols. When they saw Arthur float into the air, the mercenaries in charge of night sentries all greeted him. Some of the Rainbow Sickle mercenaries laughed softly and said, This fellow isn't sleeping in the middle of the night. Does he want to go out and have fun in the middle of the night? Heh, that's true. It's been hard on us to be assigned to such a place. Who cares, we just need to guard our night. Another mercenary casually replied. Shoo! Edwin, who was approaching, suddenly let out a soft sigh and made a gesture towards the death guards behind him. The death guards that had been advancing like ghostly shadows suddenly crouched down and retreated, concealing themselves in the lush shrubbery without any signs of life. Lorton's eyes were very sharp, and he immediately waved his hand behind him when he saw Edwin's movements. The long, snaking line was instantly replaced by soft panting sounds. These people were extremely far away from Arthur in the valley, and such soft panting sounds wouldn't be heard at all. Arthur walked out of the valley and gazed into the distance with furrowed brows. He didn't discover anything out of the ordinary, so he stopped for a while and mumbled something before returning to Tanai. At this moment, the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band, the House of Menlo, and the Catter Orc tribe had all gathered according to the distance between them. An orc who was guarding the outskirts of the Catter Orc tribe was suddenly jolted awake by an ear-piercing whistle. By the time he reacted, he discovered that there was a dangling crossbow bolt nailed to a large tree nearby. There was a letter tied to the end of the bolt. Next was the Adam Menlo family. A guard of the Adam Menlo family was also awakened by a crossbow bolt. There was also a letter on the crossbow bolt. Next was the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band, which was right next to the Mithril Mine Valley. They were also shaken by the crossbow bolts that carried a letter. The leaders of the three great powers in the Valley of Sunshine were all roused from their various states in the blink of an eye. They hurriedly gathered their men with the letter in their hands and woke up all the sleeping mercenaries. They rushed towards the Mithril Mine Valley at top speed. After delivering the 3 letters of warning with super-fast flying spells, Han Sho once again silently returned to the surroundings of the Mithril Mine Valley and hid himself. All the explosives had been set up in advance, and Han Sho coldly watched the changes in Tanai through the 3 demons, waiting for a fierce battle to break out. The 3 powers in the Mithril Mine had more than 1,000 mercenaries in total. Once this force was destroyed by Loritan, it would be difficult for the 3 powers to turn the situation around even if they joined hands. Last time, the 3 powers had gathered at Tanai Mountain, and Loritan's enmity towards Loritan had made it so that he wouldn't be merciful towards them. Once the experts guarding the Mithril Mine were killed, what awaited them would be even more brutal revenge. Florida and the other 2 were able to distinguish themselves in a place like the Valley of Sunshine, so none of them were stupid. They naturally understood this logic. Holding the attitude that they'd rather believe it, the 3 sent out their experts to communicate with each other. They brought out most of their experts from their lairs and rushed towards the Mithril Mine at top speed. As time passed by in the valley where the Mithril Mine was, some of the mercenaries who'd originally been in high spirits began to show signs of fatigue. They yawned continuously, their mental state at its worst. Edwin, who'd been hiding outside the valley, had already met up with Loritan at this time. He'd been staring coldly at the valley with a dark face when he suddenly turned his head and glanced at Loritan, saying, "We can make our move now." Killing intent burst forth from Loritan's eyes, and even his shiny bald head seemed to sparkle with a cold light. He nodded and said lowly, "My brothers died in this valley last time. This time, I'll make them pay 10-fold, 100-fold. Chief Hagen, are you all ready?" "Don't worry, Chief Loritan. We've long since prepared half of Tanai's Mithril Mine." The 10 small powers knew that they weren't as strong as any of the 4 great powers, so they'd all banded together. Hagen of the Flame Mercenary Band was the leader of this alliance. "Very good. Not just the Mithril Mine. As long as you help me annihilate the other 3 powers, you'll take all of their territory. Our Cairo Mercenary Band will still occupy the Valley of Sunshine. I hope you won't disappoint me." Loritan smiled coldly in his heart, but spoke heartily on the surface. "Don't worry, we know what to do." Hagen laughed slyly, indicating that he completely understood Loritan's thoughts. "All right, enough with the nonsense. Be careful, I'll use a dense fog to cover the path to the valley. Don't make any noise when you enter. It's best if those people all die in their sleep." Edwin yelled impatiently, an unconcealable arrogance in his expression. The Calamity Church was famous throughout the profound continent for being difficult to provoke. Apart from the Church of Light, there were very few powers that could contend against them. Even Loritan wasn't in Edwin's eyes, much less the captains of these small mercenary bands. Therefore, Edwin didn't treat them as sincerely and courteously as he had treated Han Sho. These small mercenary bands understood Edwin's identity, and naturally didn't dare provoke him. Just the sinister and mysterious aura of the 300 Death Guards was enough to make their hearts palpitate. These people had long since heard of the Calamity Church's ruthless and callous disregard for human life. When they saw Edwin's impatient expression, they all softly cried out in agreement. Edwin was still a bit proud of these people's fear. He enjoyed this feeling of superiority in terms of strength very much. He hummed lightly in arrogance, and waved his hand, ordering a tall and thin death guard in front of him. "Advance, kill them all!" The Death Guards were a group of fanatical believers of an evil god. They were fanatical believers who had given all their faith and spirit to the evil god. These people carried the evil god's will and terrifying power, mercilessly massacring all enemies of the Calamity Church throughout the profound continent. They were a group of inhumane executioners who obtained a certain kind of power by offering sacrifices to the evil god, easily possessing the ability to dictate the life and death of others. Under Edwin's command, the Death Guard's gray eyes were filled with fanatical excitement. He was as crazy as Lorton, who had gone berserk 3 times. He gnashed his teeth so hard that it made cracking sounds, as if he was chewing on the bones of some beast or human. His movements were incomparably agile as he led the 300 Death Guards under the cover of the dense fog and rushed towards the valley. The experts of the 3 major powers led by Florida, Adam Menlo, and Catter were currently on their way to the valley. Each of them was burning with anxiety as they continuously gave orders, urging the experts below to move faster, afraid that they wouldn't arrive in time. Chapter 296. Tanai's forces were either snoring lightly, dozing off, or dead asleep. There were very few who were awake, and 1 or 2 who were more cautious also slowly closed their heavy eyes under the cover of the medicinal mist. Everything seemed so perfect. It was as if the outcome had been decided from the moment the Death Guards had entered the valley. This ambush would have been a classic if it hadn't been ruined by a terrifying explosion. Rumble! Just as the Death Guard passed through the valley's passageway, a fierce gust of wind blew from an unknown corner of the valley. The wind was extremely fierce, first snapping a small tree on the mountainside. A strange butterfly effect was produced, one after another, and in the end, it unimaginably caused the mountain rocks to collapse. The millstone-sized rocks smashed into the valley along the green moss-covered rock walls. The sound of this kind of movement was so loud that even the mercenaries who were sleeping in the mist of potions suddenly woke up as if they were facing a great enemy. The first thing they did was to grab their weapons before looking at the situation that was happening. Edwin, who was also an apothecary but had extraordinary attainments, was well aware that only slightly less effective knockout agents wouldn't be easily detected by experts. Edwin had been feeling smug that victory was in his grasp when the explosion completely shattered his plans. He looked at the mercenaries stationed in the valley, all of them looking around with weapons in hand, and then looked at the Death Guards that had entered the valley. Edwin could only resist the urge to curse out loud and give the order to attack. "Charge and kill!" Whether it was Edwin or Lorton, they both understood that there was no longer a chance of a perfect ambush due to this change when they heard the sound of boulders rolling down. The 2 of them cursed inwardly as they gave the order to charge in, but their eyes darted back and forth in the area where the strong wind had come from. Their hearts were filled with a strange sense of doubt. Where did that strong wind come from? Why was it so strong? Why did it have such a miraculous effect? Was it man-made? If so, who could have done it? A series of questions filled their minds in an instant, but it was only for a moment before the 2 of them stopped thinking about it and focused all their attention on the valley where the massacre was taking place. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Within the valley, over 1,000 mercenaries had been startled awake by the falling rocks. An extremely small portion of the mercenaries near the edge of the valley were constantly dodging the falling rocks. The mercenaries on night patrol duty at the very front had already spotted the Death Guards and immediately shouted out loud. All the mercenaries of the 3 factions immediately understood. They pulled out their weapons and started chanting spells. The archers knocked their arrows and aimed at the entrance of the valley. The 300 death guards of the Calamity Church spread out like ghosts of the night. They streaked across the moonlight like extremely faint shadows. Their bodies carried a sinister, evil aura, and their eyes were filled with excitement and fanaticism. They held peculiar weapons that looked like spikes in their hands as they flew close to the ground and quickly into the center of the valley. The earth trembled as rows of sharp spikes rose from the ground. Surging flames rapidly converged to form a wide wall of fire to intercept the death guards. Lightning zigzagged above the valley and struck downwards. The water men and water dragons slowly took form and dashed away from the wall of fire. The shrill whistles of arrows rang out incessantly, whooshing towards the death guards. Tanai Mountain's magi and archers formed a layer of obstruction, instantly blocking the death guards that were rushing over. They wanted to kill all of these audacious invaders. However, as the evil guardians of the Calamity Church, the Death Guard's infamy had resounded throughout the profound continent for many years. Naturally, they weren't that easy to deal with. Not only did the 300 Death Guards not slow down, they actually increased their speed. They were wearing a kind of black and gray robes that actually had an extremely strong resistance to magic. Many of the flames that came charging at them were extinguished with a wave of their sleeves. Even the violent lightning bolts that smashed down only caused their figures to pause for a moment. They were far from being able to cause any destructive damage. The armor of the Death Guards is one of our Calamity Church's secrets. How could ordinary magic attacks have any effect on them? Dark Grand Magus Edwin, who had lagged behind, said disdainfully as he looked ahead with a dark face. They could have silently wiped out most of the forces in the valley, but the unexpected occurrence had disrupted their plans. Edwin was naturally displeased. Next to Edwin, the chief of the Cairo mercenary band, Loriton, gripped the divine weapon of the Berserker tribe, the Berserker's battle axe. He laughed sinisterly. This is good as well. It's just a waste of time. It's more interesting for them to struggle to their deaths. This time, the Cairo mercenary band had mobilized all of their elites. In addition to the Calamity Church's 300 death guards and the alliance of a dozen or so small powers behind them, they could indeed openly destroy Tanai Mountain's forces. Loriton was a battle-hungry person to begin with. This kind of face-to-face, painful slaughter suited his temperament. Therefore, when he saw Tanai Mountain's mercenaries awaken and turn their sneak attack into a frontal assault, he became even more excited. The corner of Edwin's mouth twitched, but he didn't say anything. He looked at the mercenaries surging into the valley like a tide, inwardly planning how to extort Edwin afterwards. After all, it had taken quite a bit of effort to mobilize the 300 death guards this time. Although their goal was the Church of Light, hadn't they also helped Loriton? He had to pay a price. The Death Guards lived up to their name as the God of Death. They charged into the valley with an unstoppable momentum under the surging magic attacks. The 300 Death Guards immediately split into phantom-like afterimages, leaving bloody holes in the mercenaries' bodies with their sharp, thorn-like weapons. These Death Guards trained in a strange kind of fighting aura. They seemed to be able to borrow the power of the evil god in battle. There was a natural evil aura on their bodies, and they could actually use their eyes to make people's souls tremble. The strange fighting aura had a strong corrosive power, often able to destroy the opponent's defenses and directly injure the physical body. Sitting cross-legged on a cliff in the valley, Han Sho was driving the fierce battle as the Hand of Darkness. He was silently circulating his magical yuan, slowly absorbing the lingering power of Tanai Mountain's dead body into his body while paying close attention to the battle below. The miraculous performance of the Death Guards surprised Han Sho. Han Sho could even sense a bit of the evil god's aura from these Death Guards. Last time in Valence City, the necromancer Clarendon, who died tragically at the hands of Han Sho, had used the altar to summon the three-eyed evil god Ansidezi. Also, the aura of the 1,000-meter-tall evil god with green eyes had appeared in Han Sho's mind in the lower layer of the Cemetery of Death. Han Sho could sense a bit of it from these Death Guards. Due to their fanatical faith in the evil god, the Death Guards could obtain some of the evil god's strange divine power. Perhaps they could only borrow a billionth of the evil god's power, but this power still couldn't be underestimated in this plane of existence. This could be seen from the miserable deaths of the mercenaries. 300 Death Guards wasn't a lot, but the damage they could cause was incomparably terrifying. The Temple Knights of the Church of Light and the Death Guards were equal in strength. Judging from the strength displayed by these 300 Death Guards, Han Shuo could imagine that the Temple Knight's strength must be equally terrifying. Heh, this is getting more and more interesting. Han Shuo laughed coldly as he muttered to himself. He suddenly called out softly, "What will come, or else it'll be boring." Dark Grand Magus Edwin's brow furrowed as soon as Han Shuo finished speaking. He abruptly used the levitation spell to fly into the air and surveyed the surroundings after exiting the valley. He then quickly descended towards Loritan, who had already charged into the valley and was in the middle of a second berserk battle. He quickly called out, "Large amounts of mercenaries are converging in this direction. What's going on? The Rainbow Sickle mercenary band isn't far from here. They should have discovered us with such a large commotion. 400 to 500 of Tanai's 1,000 mercenaries have already died. As long as we hurry and finish them off, Florida will be courting death even if he comes. Just his Rainbow Sickle mercenary band alone won't be able to stop our footsteps." Loritan waved his berserker's battle axe, directly cleaving apart an orc warrior around 2-3 meters tall. He responded casually, and once again charged into the crowd. It looked like he was fighting to his heart's content. "No, it's not just the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band, there's also a large group of orcs." Edwin was burning with anxiety as he yelled at Loritan. "Damn it, what's going on?" Loritan was startled and suddenly jumped in front of Edwin, asking in shock, "Kill them!" Adam Menlo was riding a 10-meter-long flamingo in the air above the valley. Behind him were his clansmen riding all sorts of flying magical creatures. Outside the valley, the muffled sounds of iron hooves pounding on the ground like the beating of drums. The experts of the three powers were converging towards Tanai. Loritan and the others' path out of the valley had already been blocked. "Fight! Otherwise, no one will be able to leave!" Loritan naturally understood the current situation and immediately howled towards the sky. His ferocious nature exploded as he charged towards the remaining mercenaries in the valley. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.